It is that time again, ladies and gentlemen. The 2026 NFL Draft is here, which means Plead Your Case has got you covered. For the next 2 hours, we will have live coverage of the NFL Draft as well as our other leagues, including the MLB, NBA, and NHL, and a special news segment including Logan Arblaster and Donny Chedrick from 93.7 The Fan, a Waynesburg alum as well. But we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves as we have got some people to talk about. And first, none other than the quarterback class. Rather considered as a weaker quarterback class from past years. However, it gets a little interesting. Fernando Mendoza, the traditional and is expected #1 overall pick, followed up by his counterparts in Ty Simpson, Garrett Nussmeier, Carson Beck, and Drew Aller. So the gentlemen on the desk of Luke Andrusik, Paul Sunbauer, and Braden King, I ask you gentlemen now, what do you think of this quarterback class? Where does it rank in recent years in your mind?
Well, I think it stinks, to be fair with you. Fernando Mendoza is about the only guy that is going to be, that's a lock to be drafted in that first round. Obviously, he's going to go 1-1 to the Raiders, as all the mock drafts know, as everyone has talked about. And then you have Ty Simpson, who's like the #2 guy, who could possibly slip into the late first round. The Steelers could take him late in the first round. Not exactly sure, but he could also fall into the second round. There's not many teams, if you look at the landscape of things. Las Vegas, the Colts might need one, but they got Daniel Jones back. The Steelers have Rodgers and Will Howard, I guess, to lead them. The Jets need a quarterback, but there's not many teams that need a quarterback. And I think this is a good year for it to be a quarterback, like not a quarterback-heavy draft. Compared to next year.
It is a very, very weak class, and I really think that it's not that big of a deal for a lot of NFL teams. As you mentioned, there isn't a whole lot of squads out there that need a quarterback desperately, and I think that most of these teams are honestly waiting until next year when you've got guys like Julian Sayin, Dante Moore, Arch Manning that are on the docket to be drafted in 2027. So to be honest with you, most teams are kind of fine that this is a weak class.
Yeah, exactly like you said, DK. This is an extremely weak draft class, and the quarterbacks, teams don't really need a quarterback this year. And it's hard to predict where these players are going to land in the draft, if they even land in the draft at all. What teams are they going to go to? That's the big question, But Fernando Mendoza should be an auto lock for the Raiders, and if he's not, I honestly don't know where he's going to go. Probably the next pick in the draft.
I know we kind of alluded to it to start out, but in kind of asking now, we'll transition here. These quarterbacks, there's not a lot of teams that require a quarterback. However, 2 of the top 3 picks are teams that are going to need a quarterback, and Fernando Mendoza does fall in that category for the Las Vegas Raiders as well as the New York Jets at #2. Do you think that really there's anyone a first-round worthy? I know there might be some guys that fall there, but is really anyone worthy to be in that first round besides Fernando Mendoza?
Well, we kind of talked about Ty Simpson had a really impressive season, but he's only a 1-year starter. He's also kind of undersized, kind of fell off near the end of the year with that Alabama squad, with them kind of simmering down near the end of the season. Garrett Nussmeier was a guy who was highly touted in early mock drafts following last year's NFL draft, of course. He was in all the early mock drafts. He was projected to go in the first round, but of course he is undersized. He's only 6'1". His dad is currently the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints, so I feel like that's a spot he could land in. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's more of a day 3 type pick. A lot of these guys are day 3 flyers that maybe they'll be a good backup quarterback for us later in the future. I think Carson Beck is a guy that you could take a flyer on in day 2. I wouldn't take him in the first round just because he's already 23, and that's not as much as the quarterback. Your age, being older doesn't really matter because you have experience, and I think that's a reason you can take a shot on him because of having all that experience with Georgia, and especially this past year taking Miami all the way to the national championship.
Yeah, it's an absolute advantage, honestly. You have these teams or these quarterbacks, I should say, like Mendoza, Simpson. I've heard a lot about Taylor Green as of late. Garrett Nussmeier is always mentioned as one of these older guys that has a lot of experience. They do. I think that actually helps them with their NFL career. Now, stats are stats, and we can judge on players, especially from the statistics side of teams that went to big schools or didn't go to big schools, and did they have success there or did they not? Fernando Mendoza, obviously we've mentioned, is the #1 consensus pick. He is going first overall. There's no doubt about that. But the rest of these guys, as far as day 2 and day 3 goes, it's up in the air, and I really do not know where they're headed.
I think that especially goes for Carson Beck. Just the way he reacted after he lost the national championship to Indiana is not somebody that you want as your star quarterback on the team. Granted, he who can really balance the pressure, but just the way he reacts to losses in crucial moments, it's just not a good trait to have on a team. You've got better options than Carson Beck, Ty Simpson, Garrett Nussbaum,
Whoa.
said.
Wow.
I just think that Carson Beck should not be your number one guy to pick.
I think if you're ranking them right now, if I ranked them, I would have it Mendoza and then Simpson and Beck would probably be the 2A, 2B because Simpson's only played 1 year. He's shown us that he has that skill and he has the talent. But Carson Beck has played four years as a starter, right? Mm-hmm. 3 at Georgia or 2 at Georgia.
He was 3 at Georgia, yeah.
1 at Miami. So he has that experience, especially being in those big-time college football playoff games. You don't have anything like that in the NFL. And I think that having Carson Beck, having gone through all this experience, will be able to thrive in the NFL. And I think just because of his experience, some team will take him on day 2.
Yeah, so you guys got to talk a little bit about kind of where Fernando Mendoza was and what he brings onto the number one table and number one overall pick table, rather. And I know we also got to chance to talk about Carson Beck, maybe some of his maturity, what he has on or off the field, where he could develop. I'm going to turn the attention to Drew Aller. Now, I don't do this in the fact of a talent standpoint. I bring up to the important question to the three of you, because personally, for myself, I don't find Drew Aller as a first-round quarterback kind of guy. I think because of the weak class, that's the only reason he falls in a top 5 consideration. And at Penn State this season as well, he did complete over 64% of his passes, but he only threw for only 1,100 yards this season. He averaged about 7 yards per attempt, and as well, only 8 touchdowns with 3 picks in his span before he did have that season-ending ankle injury as well. But for you guys, is Drew Aller a real first-round talent, or is he just only because of this weak class he's considered a top talent?
Oh, look, I'll be honest with you. There is a lot of NFL teams that have been looking at Drew Aller lately. I do not know why. I think that there's, some squads in the UFL that might need his talent. He is not a very good quarterback at all. I watched him play for the seasons at Penn State, very close to where I'm from, obviously. Drew Aller is not an NFL quarterback by any means. I don't think he has the size. I do not think he has the speed. I don't think he has the mechanical contributions in his brain to try and finesse a way to become an NFL quarterback. I really don't think he can read a playbook all that well. He doesn't manage games well. He has not managed in big moments. He's been noted as one of these Penn State chokers that have cost their team championships and possibly opportunities at national championships. He has been the guy that has always been the player that has never climbed to the top and has always been a second-place guy. He will continue to be that way, and I think he's a second-league guy in the UFL, not the NFL at all.
For you to say that Drew Aller isn't even an NFL quarterback, period, that is just disrespectful. If we've seen it. If you give Drew Aller the right pieces, for example, you gave him Tyler Warren. Look what happened between those two. Those two were studs. Drew Aller was a big piece of that. And granted, he's not a first-round pick. I'll go out and say that right now. He's not a first-round pick whatsoever. But I could see him going late in this draft and being a backup quarterback for a team and possibly even working up to a starter role in the next couple of years.
I could name 10 college quarterbacks right now that are better than Drew Aller.
Paul, you need to take your Nittany Lion hat off.
Please.
We are.
No,
please.
We
You can't
All
do
right,
that.
hold on, real quick. I want to
Drew
hear
Aller.
Hold on, real quick. I want to hear, on top of Luke's rebuttal, I want to hear the 10 quarterbacks off the top of your head right now.
You want
That's
10
what I do.
quarterbacks?
I want to hear the 10
active
quarterbacks.
college
I wanna
quarterbacks
hear-
right now,
First
because
of all,
I can do it. I can
First
do
of all,
10
I'll have
active
to-
college quarterbacks
I have
right
to
now.
agree with King and disagree with Paul because Drew Aller, I don't know, if you watch a Penn State game, if you watch any Penn State game from his tenure, I don't know how you come away impressed with him in any single game you watch him play. All the big-time games he plays, he stinks. He blows it up. Their offense was centered around their rushing core with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, who we'll be talking about in the running back segment, I'm sure, because of all the Penn State fans.
There's also
in
Ohio
this group.
State bias here. Ohio
That's
State.
not
That's
even
what I was
Ohio
gonna say.
State bias.
Me and King do have
That's
Ohio
not
State
even that.
bias.
It's not
but
even that. It's not even that.
I don't think it is that.
It's
I just
not.
don't think he's a very impressive player. I'll tell you right now, I don't think Julian Sayin is going to be a great NFL quarterback, and I'm a Buckeyes fan.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
yeah,
but I
but
will tell
like-
you something that I'm pretty sure Sean Clifford was probably better than Drew Aller, and Sean Clifford
Trace
was awful.
McSorley.
Trace McSorley, yes, obviously. I'm telling you, there's
I just
probably at least 10 college quarterbacks at the moment that are better than him.
I just hope he doesn't fall to the Browns.
So now that brings up a lot of sparked conversation. I know that's been quite popular here, especially in the Pennsylvania Is Drew Aller really a top 5 quarterback? We'll wait to see, and as this draft continues on, as the draft is still 24 hours away, we're monitoring to see if there's any sort of trades or changes coming up. But that will conclude our talk involving the quarterbacks. Next, it brings up a running back class that last year provided a bit of a spark as one of the best entire classes overall in the draft. This year, not so much. Stay tuned to find out what we think here on the Plead Your Case live draft special.
Oh, I didn't see you there. I'm Mia Hinkins, and welcome to Buell Hall, home of Waynesburg University's Department of Communication. If you visit our campus, you'll have the opportunity to attend some comm classes, enjoy lunch with our students, and watch us in action. We hope to see you here soon at Waynesburg University.
To schedule your personal visit, go to waynesburg.edu/admissions/schedule-visit. Come grow with us at Waynesburg University.
Welcome back to the PYC Live Draft Special. We now head into the running back class, which from last year took a bit of a hit. However, Jeremiah Love is quite the sight to see if you're a Notre Dame fan. Him and Jadarian Pierce, Mike Washington Jr., Emmerich Johnson, and Nicholas Singleton rank out your top 5 running backs of this year's upcoming draft, according to ESPN. Now, my first question to my elite panel of ball knowers here. Jeremiah Love, let's get out of the way. Is he of the same level as a Bijan Robinson in terms of running back talent coming to an NFL team?
Yeah, so I think the question is more of, is he at the same level as Saquon Barkley? Because Saquon Barkley was a top 5 overall pick when he went to the New York Giants back in 2018. And last year we had a really solid draft class. We've had a couple really strong running back draft classes in a row. But Jeremiah Love is the best of the bunch in recent memory. 1,300 yards this past season, over 18 touchdowns. And he's been truly spectacular. And that's not just his senior year. That's his junior year as well. And this is a guy who split the backfield with Jadarian Price, made it to a national championship, defeated Penn State in the semifinal, and really was the spark for that Notre Dame team. He kind of carried them on the offensive side of the ball, to be honest. So I think he's better than Bijan. I think the argument could be made if he's up there with Saquon.
No, I'm going to have to agree with you, Chase, on that one. Another thing to know about Jeremiah Love is that when we were looking over the overview of his stats over the past couple of years he was in college, he has not allowed a fumble. He is 6 foot, 214 pounds. This guy is legit. He knows how to – he's very explosive. You get him the ball, he's just going to take it all the way. Unfortunately, I was at the game day game, Pitt versus Notre Dame. Kind of ran all over us, but that's nor here nor there. I got to see that firsthand. He's definitely one of the top guys.
Viewing Jeremiah Love as a prospect, I'd say he's a far better prospect at the collegiate level than Bijan Robinson. Bijan was spectacular at Texas, but he didn't get the accolades that Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love being a Heisman finalist, carrying his team to the national championship, almost repeating it just a season after. If Notre Dame were to sneak into the playoffs, I think they could be the national champions. But that's a discussion for another time. I'd say he's up there with the Saquon Barkleys. As for a comp, I'm going to go with Reggie Bush.
I think it's quite frankly disrespectful to both Bijan Robinson and Jeremiah Love to compare them to each other. They're both amazing at the game in it of themselves. They're both going to be compared to others in their future. Jeremiah Love is going to be a running back that we have never seen before. He's not going to be compared to anybody ever. In this case, I think he's going to go to a team high up. I could see it as early as 3 with the Cardinals. In this case, he's one of those guys that no matter where he's going to go, he's going to make it the best that he can. That has been his whole story, his collegiate career, not only just with Notre Dame. It's been across the board. No matter where he's been and where he is in a position, he's going to make his NFL career a special one.
Yeah, I mean, the comparison according to ESPN was, in fact, Reggie Bush, and that's where they were going. And Jeremiah Love, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons this past season, had well over 1,300 yards, and he's projected as the fourth overall best player, in this year's upcoming class. So now I ask you kind of a similar question to the quarterbacks. Is there a little bit of a hit this year? Because according to ESPN, it goes from Jeremiah Love to 4, and the next closest running back's projected 50th best of all the players in this draft class. Do you think there's a real dip in talent compared to just a year ago?
I'd say there's a big dip in talent from a season ago, but also from Jeremiah Love, the two guys from Notre Dame. You go back a little bit, you said 50th pick. There's definitely a talent gap. I like the guys from Penn State going in that range. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. I know Singleton got the praise for his marks in the receiving game. I think Katron is just as talented in the receiving game. Downhill, power back. He's meant for today's game. I think he could be a threat in that range.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the Penn State guys, you couldn't have really two different running backs. Nick Singleton had a lot of pedigree from his freshman year on, but his stats kind of dwindled as he got older. Katron Allen, on the other hand, really jumped up. So to me, Nick Singleton's the guy just because of his big play home run ability. My comp for him is Kenneth Walker of the Kansas City Chiefs now, not the Seattle Seahawks. But Singleton is kind of one of those guys where you're either going to run for 3 yards or he's going to go off for 70. Katron Allen, a little bit more of a goal line type of guy. He'll rumble for 5 at a time and consistently get you 4 or 5 yards.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Go ahead, Zach.
Like you were saying with Katron Allen, I definitely think he's definitely that goal line guy. 4 or 5 yards from the goal line, he's going to be that big power guy that just gets in and really able to score for whoever team he lands on.
A lot of guys already in the NFL know that this is not a hard-hitting running back class. The Chiefs know it. They were at 9. They could have potentially get Jeremiah Love, and if he was slipping, I don't think he's going to go that far. However, they knew that this isn't going to work out for them, and they went and got Kenneth Walker in the same breath. And so in this case, this is one of those drafts where everyone's going to go defensive heavy in the first round, 2, maybe even 3, and then at some point they're going to get lucky and get some of these running backs that, no, they're not that good. No one's saying that. Then it's just going to advance themselves, and then they're going to be able to develop them underneath of veterans like Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley. Those teams that maybe need a secondary, they're going to develop, and they're going to be well off in the future.
We kind of touched on it, but now my next question to all of you guys is one that I've been thinking of myself. Is there a certain team that you think has the draft picks or is desperate enough in a running game that needs to make a move up to push for a Jeremiah Love? I know we kind of talked about there's a dip in talent. Do you think there's a specific team that stands out to you that could make a push into day one to try to capture a running back?
I think when you look at as far as trading up, I don't think there's an NFL team out there that's really going to consider moving up that many picks, especially for a position as volatile as running backs. But when you look at the top of the board, you look at the Arizona Cardinals, like Joe mentioned. I like the Titans as a very strong landing spot for Jeremiah Love, as they have Cam Ward, a Heisman winner in the past, and you can really start building up that offense if you add in Jeremiah Love. I think the other teams, I know Seattle needs a running back. Zach Charbonnet tore his ACL in the playoffs. He's going to be out for the start of the season. Then you lose Kenneth Walker. So that's a team that you can look at in the back half of the first round to potentially get a running back. I see them trading back, and Jadarian Price is a guy. I know I said that in the mock draft here at Waynesburg, but I think they'll move back and pick up a running back in that second round. As it's kind of been the trend in the NFL draft, there's usually one clear-cut running back one, and then the other guys kind of fill in the second and third.
I'm going to agree with you. The Arizona Cardinals, it's time to move on from James Conner. I think his time is over with in Arizona. The Giants, I'm not sure if they're going to trade up. They have Cam Scadaboo, who's phenomenal his rookie season, and I'm not sure if it's time to get a true running back one in New York. They might have bigger needs that they might address the running back position later on. I know the Pittsburgh Steelers have been rumored to possibly trade up. I don't see that happening either. They have bigger needs than the running back position. A bunch of these teams that I just mentioned, I'm not sure if they're willing to trade up because you mentioned that the running back position, it dies off so quickly. The Chiefs, they got their running back filled, so it might just be Seattle.
I don't think there's any team necessarily that's saying, I need to go get a running back right now and potentially move up for it. In this case, I think a lot of guys are, they're willing to let themselves slide down so that way they can get that experience later on in their services. It happens a lot with teams like the Steelers with James Conner, when they just continue to develop their guys and find a way to get them like Jaylen Warren, and they're finding that angle that they can choose. That's really what the running back position has really become, and you're not really drafting that position.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys that you have Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, those two Notre Dame guys that I think will go a little higher than some of these other guys like Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas. But I think that you have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, they'll go higher up, but at the same time, you got to think most of these teams are going to go for either a 2-string or a 3rd-string even to kind of build them up as they get into their career.
So now my final question to all of you, and more of a little bit of a rapid. I would like a name and a specific maybe attribute of quality he provides, excluding Jeremiah Love. Who is another running back you really enjoy from this class, and why? A name, attribute. We'll start with Chase and go down the line.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jonah Coleman from Washington. He's 5'8", 220. Dude is built like a bowling ball, and he'll power you into the end zone every single time. So that's why Jonah Coleman is one of the guys I'm looking at in this draft.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I'm going with Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas. Almost like Chase's pick. He's from Arkansas. He's 6'2", 223 pounds. He will get the job done. He's a wrecking ball. He'll get whatever yards are needed.
I'm going to go with Emmett Johnson. His attributes, he's extremely agile, and if I had to use one word to describe him, I'd say modern.
I'm going Nicholas Singleton. In this case, I'm going with hourglass, and sometimes you can tip him on one side of the ball, and he can do that for an entire game, and you got to flip him over, go to the other side, but he can't equal it out within one game in particular.
All righty, that will conclude our running back segment. Great work by the gentleman up on the desk, and now we transition over to our ball getters, the ones who will be receiving from our quarterbacks we talked about earlier, as we transition to the wide receivers and tight ends here on the Plead Your Case Live Draft Special. Welcome back into the Plead Your Case Live Draft Special. We now transition to the wide receivers and tight ends, and this is a much more tight-knit group than our first two groups so far, position groups. For starters, Mekhi Lemon, you have Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, and Denzel Boston. All three are first-round projected wide receivers. Then you got Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon, the 6'3", 241-pounder who has brought a lot of excitement. He's expected to go in the top half of the draft this year. Gentlemen, this is a tight-knit group, as I just said. Is there anyone that really sticks out maybe ahead of anybody else of these five group of gentlemen?
One I will say is that people pass a glance from Omar Cooper Jr. When people say the name Indiana, they usually think of Fernando Mendoza. Look at Omar Cooper Jr. He has outstanding ball skills, reliable hands, catches the ball from his body, secures it, and he runs hard after the catch. And he has improved focus and availability after maturity concerns. I think he's a great addition for this wide receiver ranking.
I like Omar Cooper Jr. My biggest thing, though, is Mekhi Lemon. has, in my opinion, he will be the best receiver in this draft class, and this is coming in a stacked draft class overall throughout. When you look at what he did at USC the past few years, he's been nothing but brilliance for the entirety of the team, and he's going to continue doing that, and there's a reason why they put him at a top 10 pick here. Whichever team gets him is going to be taking a great bet overall. I think he's an overall receiver. Great. His biggest weakness is he's a bit undersized, but I think he makes up for that in everything else.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go a completely different direction. I have Carnell Tate out of Ohio State. He had 51 receptions for 875 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2025. He also had 2 carries for 16 yards. The guy's dynamic. He can catch in traffic. He caught over 2 guys in a game against Wisconsin. There was another game against Texas back in week 1 where he bobbled it, was able to come back and catch the ball again. He can catch balls that are underthrown, overthrown, can really make the play and be that playmaker that a big team needs. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes in the draft as well.
My biggest thing about Carnell Tate that I have an issue with him, because I like him a lot as an OSU fan, my biggest thing for him is that he had Jeremiah Smith a lot of times as his wide receiver 1. And when you have a lot of attention going to a guy like Jeremiah Smith throughout the season, it opens up a large value for someone like Carnell Tate to really show what he can do on the field. I have him comparing a bit to T. Higgins. I know a lot of other people have said that, but that's my comparison to him because when you get another great wide receiver next to him, he can do a lot more.
So we've talked about these 5 guys and kind of where they stand ahead of everybody else. But what about these guys in the back? Because there's still other talented gentlemen that are sitting ready to be drafted again. And I know tomorrow night one's the biggest night. It's going to be the most popular. It's the top 32 gentlemen of this upcoming draft class will get drafted. But is there anyone to you that you feel should be integrated? And if you put him in the top 5, who are you taking out?
Yeah, I think for me, a guy that I could see possibly going into the top 5 is Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee. He was the second receiver in this class to have 1,000 yards behind Mekhi Lemon. I think he's a guy, he's big, he's a big target you can go to in the red zone. He's a target that if you need to, he can catch it down low, catch it up high. I think Chris Brazzell can sneak into the top 5. And the person I take out is Jordan Tyson. I think Jordan Tyson is a good receiver, the receiver out of Arizona State. However, the injury issues have been a big problem for Tyson. He had a shoulder injury. He had a hamstring injury. He's had a couple of knee surgeries as well. If he can stay healthy, Jordan Tyson is probably one of the best receivers in this class. But I put Chris Brazzell up there to replace Jordan Tyson just of the fact that Tyson hasn't been able to stay on the field and stay healthy.
One person that I'm surprised that you guys haven't talked about is Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. He shattered the all-time tight end record. You know, ran a 4.39 at the combine. That's insane. This guy's a unit. And the fact that you guys haven't really said much about him kind of surprises me. I'd say I would put him up there in the top 5 within these classes.
Well, I do like Chedrick. He is a great tight end, and whoever gets him in the first round is going to have a great steal of a player. Give me Skylar Bell from UConn. He had 920 yards receiving, 60 receptions, 7 touchdowns, and he has been nothing but great for UConn Huskies. Granted, it's the UConn Huskies. They have a fairly weak schedule they play. They don't face any major Power 4 conferences 24/7, but when you see what he does on the field, he's a dynamic player. He reminds me a lot in the catching of Tyler Lockett. When he gets there and he gets the ball, he goes down, he stays with the ball, and he's a great receiving tight end. He can also do more off the field. He reminds me more of a running back playing receiver with how shifty he can get on the field outside. I would take out Sadiq, though, and I would put Skylar Bell in there. He's going to be a very underrated receiver, and whoever gets him in the late rounds won't regret it.
I think that when talking about Kenyon Sadiq, he falls into maybe Brock Bowers category. I think ability as a ball getter, a guy who can be a number 1 receiver, if you will, if you don't really have any wide receivers on your team. I know there's a handful of teams that are going to be looking forward to that to try to do what Las Vegas was able to do and hopefully just get that lucky. But sticking with the tight ends as well, there's a gentleman by the name of Eli Stowers who at Vanderbilt, who is ranked as the 36th best player in the class, but he's the 2nd best tight end. To you guys, what does that say about Sadiq to be able to be so far ahead of everyone else in his class? Because kind of like a Jeremiah Love in the running back class, you have a first-round talent and then nothing until the 2nd round. Where do you think that says about Kenyon Sadiq? And what does it say maybe about 4 teams looking for a tight end if there should be anyone who makes a push for one as well?
Sadiq falls into a rare category of players with a 241-pound frame and a 43.5-inch vertical, and 11-foot-1 broad jump. He's in that rare category of players for tight ends. Like I said, he's very quick on his feet, and he's a linebacker bite to him as well. it's kind of like he's a freak athlete in a way. For him to be up ahead everyone with this kind of build, it says a lot about the kind of player that he is.
Well, Chedrick is great. Let's take a look back at a few years ago in draft class where Kyle Pitts was the number 1 ranked tight end in the draft class, and he went 4th overall to the Falcons. And number 2 was Pat Fryermuth out of Penn State. All it could be is a red herring. And while Chedrick, I don't think it would be that low for it. Kyle Pitts is a great player in the league right now. He's still a starter. I think we're going to see something similar to that, where you're not going to get this great generational level player, but it's just the talent in between those guys for tight end levels kind of just makes that gap difference in it. Because that draft class with Kyle Pitts was stacked overall. And we're going to see that again here, I think. I don't think we're going to see much of, it's because the tight end's great. Chedrick makes that great of a difference like we saw with Bowers. I just think it's an overall of the class and the talent in between makes it a difference here.
Yeah, for me, I think you look at it. You look at where they played. Kenyon Chedrick played at Oregon, one of the top schools in the Big Ten. And then you look at Eli Stowers. He played at Purdue. The Boilermakers haven't been that great in the past years. I think Stowers is athletic. I think you can get him the ball in traffic. I think he can go out and branch out as a receiver. Same with Chedrick. I think he can do that. But Chedrick also got the looks because he played at Oregon, because of the receiver he was. Now, granted, he did haul in 51 receptions for 560 yards and 8 touchdowns. But I just think Kenyon Chedrick is the better tight end, not only because he is athletic and because of what he can do on and off the field, but I think where he played is a big story to tell as well.
So now wrapping up here, we kind of done this so far with the first 2 segments. I'm curious to all of you. At the end of the night, who was the first receiver taken off the board in your eyes?
I think it's going to be, after everything I said about Omar Cooper Jr., I think it will be Mekhi Lemon. His resume, as you can say, is greater than the other players, and I do think that he's going to be the first one gone.
While I did say Mekhi Lemon at the start, with how the teams usually think and whatever, I think there will be one team that takes their shot on Carnell Tate over Mekhi Lemon, and I think because of that, Carnell Tate will be the first receiver off the board.
I'm going to agree with Richie on this one. I think Carnell Tate is the first receiver off the board. As much as Jordan Tyson has been the most projected star receiver in this class, and while I think he has been the best receiver in this class, the injuries scare a lot of teams. I think Carnell Tate goes to a team like the Titans. Maybe he falls to 7 at the Commanders, or maybe he goes 8 to the Saints, and they pair him up with former teammate Chris Olave. Going to be exciting to see, but I do think Carnell Tate will go before any of those receivers.
Alrighty, gentlemen, thank you very much. I know it's a little bit more of an interesting dynamic group, and if we want to talk about interesting, one group that doesn't get a lot of love that should are our hogs up front, our offensive linemen. That includes guards, tackles, and centers. And we're going to dive into that next here on the Plead Your Case live draft special.
I'm working here. My bad.
Welcome back into the Plead Your Case live draft special. Again, I'm Ethan Spazarski, hosting you through these 2 hours of content preparing for the NFL draft, which is now officially less than 24 hours away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. where we'll see well over 250 gentlemen come up and hear their names called to be heading over to the NFL draft. And now we transitioned as our final position group on the offensive side of the ball with our offensive linemen. Now, this is a group that brings a lot of talent, and there's a lot of gentlemen who could be seeing themselves here in the first round. I mean, for instance, Maui Goa, he is one of the first gentlemen that you have to be looking at as well out of Miami. Then Monroe Freeling, you have Caden Proctor, Spencer Fano, and then the Oleg Vega Ione as well out of Penn State. All these gentlemen over 6'4", no one under that 6'4" frame. We kind of saw last year a bit of a different size difference. But gentlemen, I ask you first, in a group full of talent, like the wide receivers, who stands out to you most of these group of 5 gentlemen that ESPN has ranked the 5 best offensive linemen in all of college football?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Monroe Freeling, the junior out of Georgia. He is 6'7", okay, 315 pounds, and he ran a 4.93, 40-yard dash. This guy is an absolute unit. He can block whatever you need. He can go out if there is a screen pass or whatever it is. This guy can do it all. Like I said, 6'7". His broad jump was 9 feet and 7 inches. That's a lot for a guy that's 6'8" and 315 pounds. So I'm going to have to go. I'm going to go with the Georgia junior, Monroe Freeling.
Listen, guys, when we're talking about offensive linemen, I'm not going to sit here as a guy that's nearly over 150 pounds and act like I know the ins and outs and techniques of how to be an offensive lineman. But what I can say is when I'm looking at offensive tackles, I'm looking at the offensive line, guards, I'm looking for the intangibles. I'm looking for the measurables. And we're talking about a guy in Caden Proctor out of Alabama that is 6'7". You mentioned Monroe Freeling is 6'7". Well, so is Caden Proctor, 352 pounds. And last year, he played all the way up into 360 pounds. This is a massive guy. He's an absolute monster at the tackle position. Not to mention, he had an 11-yard reception last year in his last season for the Crimson Tide. So I think his size and movement's there, and that's enough to say for me that he can develop into the next NFL star tackle.
I mean, for me, I'm going to kind of go off the board here. Spencer Fano, super polished, and that's what you need from a guy, especially one of the premier positions of the offensive line. You want somebody that's come out of the draft where he can plug and play, put him on the offensive line, not too raw, but still moldable and coachable, and Fanu is just that, athletic. The transition from athletic offensive lineman, that's what you need a guy. You need a guy that can run around, pull, do all sorts of different stuff, and he's viewed as one of the safest prospects on the offensive line in the draft, so that's why he's one of my favorite prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of talented gentlemen that have proven themselves and all of a big stature as well. But now my next question to you guys is, I think offensive line overall is one of the most needed positions to be addressed in this year's draft. I think a lot of teams should be looking at the offensive line, whether it varies from tackle, guard, and or center. To you, who's in the most need of offensive line help here in the first round? Do you think there's one team that stands out over the other? Do you think anyone in the top 10 should probably consider maybe even moving up? What is your guys' take on the offensive line talent this year, as well as what's a team that should be maybe pushing forward to get that need fixed?
I think that the offensive line and offensive tackle draft this year is very, very deep. There is a lot of guys that are able to be plug and play. That's all this is. But I'm going to go with the team that probably needs the most help right now. I'm going to go with the hometown team in the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Broderick Jones.
Broderick Jones out, losing Isaac Sayamalu over this free agency. I definitely think that they're going to be a team to watch with their 21st pick. Or even if they decide to trade up, I think you'll see an offensive line taken there for the Steelers.
I'm going to have to agree with you there, Zach. I mean, honestly, this draft's in Pittsburgh. You're going to think, you'd have to think that the Steelers are going to be willing to make a big move. Maybe if these guys they don't feel are going to fall to 21, they're using one of their 12 draft picks, a couple of their 12 draft picks to move up and be able to go up and grab a guy like you mentioned. But I'm going to go with Maui Noah from Miami University. I think that's a guy the Steelers could use at guard. They could slide him over to that position.
and in place of Siamalu, who's not with the Steelers anymore, in place of Broderick Jones, if they feel like he's better maybe at left tackle, if you're going to have a good quarterback, and that's what they're worried about, who's going to be the next franchise quarterback of the Steelers, you also have to have a franchise left tackle. I mean, Joe Burrow got sacked more than anybody in league history the year that the Bengals made the Super Bowl, and they couldn't win because he never had any type of protection. So I think Maui Noah from Miami University, he only allowed 2 sacks in 2 years, and that's over the course of 2,000 snaps played.
I mean, and going back to teams for a little bit, not to deviate against the Steelers, but I think the Chargers, you saw how decimated they were last year whenever all the offensive linemen went down. Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, and then really looking for that interior guy. You know, Mekhi Becton went down, and I mean, Herbert, for the last couple years, he's been hit around like nobody else besides Joe Burrow. And so a guy that they might want to buy in early is Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. Very versatile, can play both guard positions and play a little bit of center. I have a comp of Elgington Jenkins, formerly of the Green Bay Packers. So, I mean, the Chargers are going to be one of those teams that could move up for one of these premier guys.
Mark, you bring up an interesting point because I know last year the Chargers looked to be the clear runaways of the AFC West in the preseason at one point. They were considered the ones who were going to be dethroning the Chiefs. And, in fact, even though the Chiefs ended up kind of helping themselves and losing and giving the Broncos the lead of that division, the Chargers were really just 2 offensive linemen away from kind of changing and directing their future. Do you think, Logan and Zach specifically, because we just saw Mark touch on this, that the Chargers are 1 offensive lineman pick away from being a real playoff contender and maybe even finding their way into a conference championship or Super Bowl?
I could definitely see it. The Chargers have everything they need. You have Justin Herbert as your quarterback, the guy that's leading this team. He has all the talent in the world. It just stinks because he doesn't have the help that for the protection there. But I will say this. I think everyone says defense wins championships, but if we're talking football here, you got to protect your guy and your quarterback. He's the guy that's throwing the ball, calling the play, so you got to be able to protect him, and you must take everything that you got, whether it's in the draft, free agency, or trades. You got to be able to go ahead and really solidify that offensive line.
Let me sum this up real quickly with the Chargers situation. They have Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert had more passing yards in his first few years in the NFL than Peyton Manning did. This is a severely underrated Chargers team with what they can do just because of their quarterback position. And when you look at what they have, all you might need is a guy, the left tackle or right tackle position that can hold it down for him long enough to deliver these balls to his playmakers. I'm looking for a Trent Williams type of guy for the Chargers to try to take advantage of here in this draft.
Yeah, no doubt, and kind of finish up on the Chargers things. They really need to address the center position. I mean, Bradley Bozeman of all people, where you got to go after a guy named like Jake Slaughter out of Florida, one of the best centers in the draft, a final for the Remington Award, the best center. So, I mean, if you're looking second, third, and fourth rounder, if you really want to beef up that offensive line and get the Justin Herbert his protection he deserves as a quarterback, and one of the better quarterbacks in the league, I think Jake Slaughter would be an excellent pick.
So now we talk about it. I asked earlier, some of those guys where they kind of rank overall. According to ESPN, it is, in fact, the Cleveland Browns are projected in a few different mock drafts to be the first team to attack in at the offensive line position. My final question to you, gentlemen, in more of a rapid-fire pace, do you believe there is an offensive lineman taken through the first 5 picks, or are we going to have to wait till 6 and below?
I think that they're going to have to wait a little bit. There's a lot of potential there with everyone, whether it be on the defensive side and or offensive side. I don't think an O-lineman is going to be taken that high, 1 through 5, but it is the NFL draft. You never know what happens. And to comment on what Ethan Sprzarski said, there's nothing saving those Cleveland Browns.
I'm going to have to agree with that. I mean, I don't think anything can save Cleveland, even Deshaun Watson, who might be playing quarterback again this year. Who knows what they're going to do there. But in my tiers of players this year, there's a bunch of guys I have on the offensive line inside the top 20 of prospects, but I only have the highest ranked at 13th overall, so I wouldn't expect them to be inside the top 5 picks at all.
And just to close it out, I mean, just a dog in the Browns. The Browns are a lost soul wandering to nothingness. But, I mean, I think you'll see a run of offensive linemen once you kind of get past that number 10 into the teens. That's where you're going to see most of the guys go, and then you might see a couple guys sneak in the back half. But, I mean, I don't see anybody trading up in those first 5 picks.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for providing some insight on a very talented and underrated group, for this year's draft. We're now going to transition over to the NBA. They have a draft coming up here, and with only 55 picks, who are some of the guys that we could be looking forward to see in the National Basketball Association? We're going to take a break from the NFL and transition to the hardwoods here when you come back after a short break on the PYC Live Draft Special.
Welcome back to the 2026 Plead Your Case Live Draft Special. I'm Benicio DeFalco. To my left, Brett Gabita and Cade Henderson. This time we're taking things to the hardwood, and we're talking the 2026 NBA Draft. Starting things off, in 2024, we saw 3 top 10 picks all play overseas basketball. Some names to mention: Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo all played overseas basketball. Who are some overseas talent to look out for in this year's draft? We'll start with you, Cade.
I think this year's overseas talent is slightly worse than the usual. You talk about your Doncic's. Antetokounmpo was a lottery pick in his year, but we're talking about a class with very minimal overseas talent. The only guy I can possibly think of is Kareem Lopez out of the Mexican League. He's a well-sized forward. He gets down low. He gets a ton of rebounds. He's physical, although I'd say he's a little bit inefficient, and you're talking about a guy who doesn't really space the floor well.
I think general managers are kind of more careful nowadays, especially after the Risase and Sarr class when those guys didn't live up to the hype. I felt like, looking back, those picks were kind of reaches after the Wembanyama class because we saw how dominant he was. But yeah, like you said, Cade, there's not really a whole lot this year. Kareem Lopez, one guy to mention. A lot of guys nowadays coming from the NBL. That's where Josh Giddey came from, so I think guys or GMs are kind of looking at that league. I'd like to mention Dash Daniels. Name might sound familiar. It's actually the younger brother of Dyson Daniels, who plays for the Atlanta Hawks. He's only averaging 4 a game right now overseas, but really you're not looking for scoring now when you're nabbing a guy from overseas. Hugo Gonzalez, first-round pick last year to the Celtics, that's about what he averaged, and he's been fine in the NBA.
Yes. So Walter Clayton Jr. kind of rose on the scene just a season ago with the Florida Gators winning the national championship. He was the biggest riser last season throughout tournament play. Who are some names to look out this year? We'll go back to you, Brett.
I think Braylon Mullins is the guy that you have to look at, and it's a different guy every year that displays that clutch gene. 2016, it was Dante DiVincenzo, had 26 off the bench in the national championship game. Last year, like you said, it was Walter Clayton, all of his clutch shots throughout March Madness. Braylon Mullins was kind of that guy this year, and he kept UConn in the natty with his three-point shooting, too. If it weren't for his three-point shooting ability that day, the game would have been over a whole lot sooner.
I like to keep it on UConn. I think you picked the wrong UConn guy. I'm a bigger fan of how Terrace Reed Jr. played in this year's March Madness. I think his stock rise from being an undrafted kind of guy to being a middle-of-the-second-round effective big who can dominate inside and who knows his size. He's a big who plays big inside. He gets a ton of boards, and he's really physical. I love how he plays.
One more, Benicio. Bennett Sturts. He played every minute of the tournament possible, all 40 minutes in every game. I think the scouts are going to take notice of that high motor.
So you guys mentioned 2 UConn guys. So out of the national championship teams, we're talking UConn and Michigan. Who can be some key contributors at the highest level for you guys? Is it anyone from Michigan, or is there any more UConn guys?
I think a lot of the Michigan guys this year are a lot better than the UConn guys. All those UConn guys you think of Caravan, Reed Jr., Mullins, they're all in that second-round range. Michigan has 2 prospects I'm highly interested in, but the main one is Yaxel Lendeborg. He is the most polished NBA prospect coming into this year's draft. He is a little bit old, but you're getting a good floor spacing big who's able to score at all 3 levels, and I think his veteran presence as a veteran college player is going to be a lot more helpful than people are giving credit for.
Yeah, I think Lindeborg is a top 10 pick. He showed a lot of strength being able to play through that injury the whole entire March Madness. 3-and-D, he can dish the ball out too. I like the big men as well, Marez Johnson and Ade Mara. I think both of them are high prospects to watch out for. Whether it might not be lottery, it might be mid-first, but teams are going to take chances. They're going to take a flyer on those big men.
Draymond Green, 4-time NBA champion. He was drafted in the second round. Nikola Jokic, an MVP in this league, and also an NBA champion. He was drafted during a Subway commercial. Who can be some late-round sleepers that might have some of those circumstances that you might not remember them on draft night, but they'll pop up later on? Who are some late-round sleepers in this year's draft?
I like Otega Oweh. I feel like he kind of had an under-the-radar season at Kentucky. Just in general, Kentucky kind of flew under the radar this year. They were a 7 seed. He had that 30-point game against Santa Clara, that half quarter. I feel like people were going to take notice to that, just seeing that he can do something like that in the big moment. And then another one is Milan Momcilovic from Iowa State. Big man, shoots threes. He took almost 300 threes this year. He made half of them. I think a big shooter is like what you need in the NBA nowadays. So that's people are going to be looking at that.
Yeah, floor spacing is definitely a big thing. My favorite prospect, though, in this second round is Ruben Chinyelu. I love his defensive enforcement. I mean, this is a traditional big who just enforces his size down low and is unafraid. He plays great defense. He fills a great role in Florida, who had a ton of talented bigs, and I think he's the best one of them all. I think he's highly underrated. He's got great defense, enforces himself down low. He's going to be dangerous if you give him a couple years.
Now for the million-dollar question. Between A.J. DeBonza, Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, Darius Acuff Jr., and Cameron Wilson, they lead the way in this year's draft. Of the top 5, who's the best of the bunch? We'll go to you, Brett.
I think it's DeBonza. I think he's definitely the best scorer. Is he the best all-around? I don't know, but I think the scoring ability that he showed at BYU, playing on a team like that where he's not surrounded by a lot of talent, I think you get a guy like that, surround him with some talent in the National Basketball Association, and it can elevate his game even further.
Look, DeBonza and Peterson, they're both amazing scorers in this top 5. My favorite prospect, though, is the sure bet. Cameron Boozer is easily the safest bet in this draft. He's got high basketball IQ. He's going to space the floor. He's going to be a 3-level scorer. He's going to play well if he gets some good guard play around him. He's the safest bet. He's going to fit the best in an NBA system. I think you draft him first over those other guys to try and get someone who's going to actively make your team better.
Well, that's going to wrap up the NBA portion of the 2026 live draft special, but we're taking things to the big guys on the defensive side. We're talking defensive line, so stay tuned to the Plead Your Case 2026 live draft special.
Welcome back here to the NFL side of our live draft special. Now, last year, Ohio State dominated in the offensive talent for that draft. This year, defensively, that's where things get interesting. And there is a gentleman on the interior defensive line that we're going to be focusing on that hails to Ohio State, who's quite the wrecking force this year in Caden McDonald, the 6'2", 326-pounder. There's also a couple other gentlemen that give him run for his money: Peter Woods, Christian Miller, Caleb Banks, and Xavion Harris out of Ole Miss. Now, guys, I know there's a lot of you who are very passionate about this interior defensive line group, so I'm going to let you guys kind of segue us into this and what you're expecting from these gentlemen so far in this draft.
Well, I think it's funny that you mentioned that Ohio State dominated the offensive side of the draft last year. You could say the same thing about the defensive side with all the guys that they have. Mentioned Caden McDonald, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, and Caleb Downs all on the board, as well as Davis and Igbinosun down the board, some other guys like that. I think this interior defensive line class really has that big four. Xavion Harris is 6'8" and weighs near 330 pounds, which is pretty impressive, and that's a guy that will clog up the interior. But guys like McDonald, Woods, and Banks, and even Christian Miller from Georgia, all those are the big four that I really think are going to be possible first-rounders. Two of those guys, I believe, will fall into the second round, those being Banks and Miller. Peter Woods, guys, how do you guys feel about Peter Woods? That's my big deal in this position class, because he is somewhat undersized, weighing under 300 pounds. Now, he could put that on for the NFL, but I think that is a guy that is going to be more of a pass rusher and not more of a interior guy.
I could definitely see Woods as being more of a pass rusher than more an interior guy. If you want an interior guy, you're going to go after the Ohio State phenom and Caden McDonald. This guy is 6'2", 326 pounds, nose tackle. This guy can get the job done. I would say he's kind of like a Cam Hayward almost. Not super tall, but he's very, very strong, very built, and he's able to get to that quarterback very quickly.
Yeah, the numbers didn't really support McDonald well in the combine either, but his play on the field is absolutely tremendous. He just ragdolls guards in the middle. He absolutely dominates in the interior. He's able to get to the quarterback and the running back. Despite his size being so small at 6'2", the only thing I worry about him is he's kind of just a bull rusher. All that strength, it comes down to him just being a bull rusher. He doesn't really have a plan B besides that, but of the nose tackles, he's probably one of the most polished of the class alongside Peter Woods.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these guys. I mean, Peter Woods, he was dominant. He recorded 30 total tackles, only had 2 sacks. But if you're a defensive tackle, your job is not really to get sacks. Your job is to stop the run. Your job is to make sure no one can get through those holes, as well as Caden McDonald, who, while he only had 3 sacks as well, he had 65 total tackles for that D-line at Ohio State. So you can't really go wrong with either of them. It's going to be exciting to see what team goes for both of these defensive tackles, but I do think that they go into the top 10, maybe even in the top 15.
That's an interesting take. Which one of those do you think would go in the top 10 or top 15?
For me, I think McDonald would go before Woods just because of the kind of player he is, and he can stop the run. I think a lot of guys now are looking for that D lineman that can stop the run. You want a guy that can maybe stop the pass too, but a lot of teams are run heavy in this NFL, in today's NFL. So I think Caden McDonald goes off the board first, but I think Peter Woods follows behind maybe 2 or 3 picks after.
I think a lot of the mock drafts are talking about, I think Woods could probably go in the top 15 just based off his talent. But I feel like most of those, the top 3, Woods, Banks, and McDonald, have all been talked about as late first rounders as the most part. I think all 3 of them could get picked in the first round. Those guys are all big and strong, and they have the talent like Peter Woods.
Yeah, well, the guy we haven't talked about in this list so far of the 3 you mentioned is Caleb Banks. The big thing about him is we talked about Xavier Harris being big. Caleb Banks is just as big. He's 6'6", 327 pounds. He's in that late first round, as you mentioned. The big thing about him is he's absolutely explosive, and he's versatile everywhere. He had an incredible Senior Bowl. He was dominating in one-on-one reps. Big thing you worry about him, though, is he has terrible tackling technique. It's a big worry with him. I struggle to think that he'll be competitive at the NFL level. I'm unsure about the tackling issues and the fatigue he has on the field, but he's one of those talents in that top 3 as well.
Do you think his versatility can carry over to the NFL? He is big. It says that he's moved from the 3 different spots both on the outside and then on the inside on the defensive line. He's been very scheme. They've been able to work their scheme around him. Do you think he'll be able to translate that?
Yeah, I think if you move him more towards the 3-tech area of the field, I think he's going to be a lot more effective than if you put him at a general nose tackle spot. I think that'll help him more. With the gap discipline issues, that is a little bit of a concern, but I like to think of him more as a 3-tech than a traditional nose tackle.
Yeah, I think you guys really covered a lot of ground there, and I think something else that a lot of you guys were talking about specifically is, all right, there's really 3 guys that could go back to back to back, and 3 first-round talents in there as well. Now I ask you, who sticks out of this group and could get bumped out because of some sort of flaw? Is there anyone who's maybe overrated?
I think Cade has a guy that he would like to talk about.
Oh,
Xavier Harris. We kind of talked about him
Xavier
earlier.
Harris is a terrible prospect. I do not care about how big he is.
He's
he
big,
can be
that's
6'8" and 330 all he wants. He has no talent playing at the nose tackle position. He's frustratingly slow. He has terrible tackling. Everything about him with actual technique and skill is terrible. He's not going to translate to the NFL level. It's just a slow defensive tackle who's big. We got to stop worrying about size. Remember when we worried about Desmond Watson being 400 pounds?
Yeah.
It doesn't work
probably
at the
a good
NFL
reason.
level. There's a reason he was a practice squad guy. That's the same thing that's going to happen to Harris.
I mean, I could see that, but I think Xavier Harris has room to grow. I don't think he's necessarily a Desmond Watson situation. He's almost 100 pounds less than him. So I think the big thing is if you're Xavier Harris, you're going to be the main run stopper for that team. You're not going to be if when he does get picked, because I believe he will, and I think he will be a early second, late second. But I think that he's going to be a massive run stopper with him being 6'8". That's absolutely insane. 6'8", this guy, he ain't letting nothing through. This guy is a brick wall.
I think for me, it's probably going to have to be Christian Miller out of Georgia. We talked about so many. Nowhere did any of us talk about Christian Miller from Georgia. He's the 49th best defensive tackle in the class, according to Mel Kiper. I don't believe that. I've kind of watched him. He's a lot like Harris, is very slow. He's not really quick off the ball, off the line of scrimmage. So I think he's a guy that could fall. Caleb Banks, I think he could possibly fall, but I think it's what you said, Cade, that he is athletic enough, he is big enough that he will be maybe into that later round of the first, but I could definitely see him going in the first 2 picks of the second round as well.
There is one guy we haven't talked about, and he was on a part of a stacked defense this year. That Texas Tech's Lee Hunter. He was a second-team All-American, along with guys like Jacob Rodriguez on that defensive line, Romello Height, other guys like that, players who are on the edge. How do you guys think he's going to stack up? Lee Hunter, I think he is going to be – he's going to keep producing just like he did in the Big 12 this year.
Well, I think Texas Tech, that whole defense, you might as well draft them. They're all uber talented. I wouldn't pass up on any of them. If we want to talk about Lee Hunter a little bit, he's got violent hands. He's an anchor in the middle. He's an intense bull rusher. And the big thing about all those Texas Tech guys is they produce at the college level in P4 situations. The biggest thing I find with a lot of draft busts is it's all about the size. We just talked about Xavier Harris. All he is size. These Texas Tech guys, and in specific Lee Hunter, are excellent producers at the college level, and that will translate with all that experience to the NFL level.
Sometimes you just have to take the guy that produces and actually is talented and not basing off the profile like Xavier Harris, who's 6'8", 330, as Zach talked about. He's a big guy that, with his stature could make a big impact at the league, but Lee Hunter is a guy that has produced, that whole Texas Tech defense has produced. Those are guys you're going to want to draft. I think Lee Hunter could be a late second round or early third round pick.
Well, gentlemen, first of all, I've never heard someone, you could be as 6'8", 330 or whatever the poundage was as you want to be. There's no talent. I've never heard that comparison. I kind of like that one, though. Found that very funny. But that's going to conclude our coverage on the interior defensive line portion. Gentlemen, thank you very much for giving us a very in-depth look into those guys as well. We're now going to step aside and look at another league. It goes by the NHL. It's growing in popularity, and there's a lot of talent coming in this year's draft class, including the question, who could be the #1 overall consensus pick? Is it Gavin McKenna, or is it somebody else? You're just going to have to stick around to find out here on the PYC Live Draft Special.
Welcome back to the Plead Your Case Live Draft Special. I'm Tyler Aaron alongside my panelists, Stone Mangus and Braden King. We're here to talk about the 2026 NHL Draft that's taking place up in Buffalo, New York, not too far from where we are. But guys, this draft class seems to be all spread out over the place. Tons of defensemen, tons of forwards, especially here up in the first round. What stands out to this draft compared to other years? Stone, I'll start with you.
Well, I think that you've got a really solid top 5 core group of prospects that are going to go off the board really early in this year's NHL draft. And I have Gavin McKenna, Keaton Verhoff, Ivar Stonberg, Carson Carrolls, and Chase Reed as my top 5. And once you get past those top 5, it kind of tapers off a little bit. You mentioned that there's a good mix of forwards and defensemen, but I really like this top 5. There are some guys, in the teens and in the 20s that I like, but these top 5 really I'm looking for to be really powerful NHL stars.
Yeah, the top 5 is really, really solid. I think that the players, especially on the top 5, like you were mentioning, Stenberg and McKenna on the top 2, is upper echelon kind of prospect. They're the ones that are going to make a big impact in the NHL early. I think that especially when they get drafted first or second overall. That's going to be the main theme for them. But going later down the rounds, you say there's a couple of guys that are in the teens and the 20s that may have shots. I think that there's going to be more of that. I really liked how last year's class was. I thought there was a lot of talent in last year's pool. I think that's going to be the exact same thing this year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the top 5 right now. My top 5, Gavin McKenna, Keaton Verhoff, Carson Carrolls, Chase Reed, and Caleb Malhotra.
Caleb Malhotra, Manny Malhotra's kid.
Yeah, and so, just looking at that, do you really think it's going to be a top-heavy draft, or do you think that there's going to be a lot more depth in the rounds? Because, you look at past drafts, you look at 2015, that's a prime example, and how many star players came out of the late first round, second round, and of course, your top 10 picks. Is it going to be another one of those drafts like 2015, or is it just going to be a top-heavy draft?
Well, last year, it kind of seemed like it was going to be that 2015 kind of rebirth. We saw a bunch of players from last year's draft and a couple of years back, like Ryan Leonard and Ben Kindle, make NHL mainstays on their roster lately. This year, I think it's going to be just a little bit more of the same, honestly. There's a lot of depth in this draft, and especially in the first round. I really like some of these players that are past the 12th and 13th overall picks, like guys like Ryan Lynn and J.P. Hurlburt. I really think they're going to make impacts at some point. It's going to take a little bit of seasoning for those guys to really catch up, but ultimately, I think that at some point they will become NHL mainstays.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Ryan Lynn is a name that I really agree with. He's one of those offensive defensemen that we're really starting to see become a common thing in the NHL. Most recently, Matthew Schaefer, who went first overall last year. He tied a rookie record for points this year in the NHL, and he's trying to push his Islanders into a playoff spot. Don't know if they're going to make it, but yeah, Ryan Lynn, he's one of those guys that could go in the teens or the 20s, like I said, but will take, as you mentioned, some seasoning before he becomes a bona fide NHL star.
And the other thing I have to say about Lynn is he's really underutilized, and I think that that's something that his squad, the Vancouver Giants, have not been doing a very good job of, is limiting his ice time. And I think the reasoning why is it's because it's killing his draft stock. There wasn't one defenseman last year that was under 6 foot tall that was drafted. He stands 5'11". I think that that's something that a lot of scouts are looking at, saying, okay, he's a little too small. But I also think that he's got a lot of talent.
He's a guy that I kind of hope falls to the Penguins. They're in the playoffs now. Obviously, they pick a little later, but he's a guy that I really hope falls to Pittsburgh.
Now, you look at the NCAA and the impact that college hockey has really made in the NHL draft. I'm looking at my top 2 picks. These are both guys who are in the NCAA. You got Penn State and you got North Dakota. And then my number 8, Ilya Morozov, he goes to Miami. So do you think with the NCAA, do you think it's becoming a top dog as a sort of a prospect pool for NHL teams when it comes to drafting?
That's a really tough question, TA, because a really good point here is with Gavin McKenna. McKenna came into Penn State. He joined a team that went to the Frozen Four for the first time ever 2 years ago, and that team was returning a lot of players. Matt DeMarsico is another key proponent on that team. But McKenna comes in. He's obviously a superstar, but it's almost like he disrupted the chemistry that Penn State had. As I mentioned, they returned a lot of the players, and he's a wonderful talent, but for whatever reason, things just didn't really click with Penn State this year. They lost a bunch of games to Michigan State and Michigan. They really struggled with those top dogs in the Big Ten. And while it's great for these players to get the kind of exposure that you can get in the NCAA, I think it's a good thing and a bad thing.
I agree. I still think that Canada is the top development market, especially in the CHL. I think that those 3 leagues especially, there is guys all over the place as far as a whole bunch of different skill levels. But the top league, in my opinion, people don't really notice it a whole lot, is the SHL, the Swedish Elite League. I think that those players especially, you take a look at stats like McKenna, 51 points in 35 games in the NCAA. There's some guys with 100 points in the CHL. 33 points in 43 games is absolutely phenomenal for the Swedish Elite League level, and especially for an 18-year-old like Ivar Stenberg. I think that that's why he's a first overall pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what makes Gavin McKenna a consensus number 1 pick? Because we've seen in the past, how they like doing really early predictions, and ever since Gavin McKenna has been 16 years old when he first started playing for the Medicine Hat Tigers, and then he went over to Penn State, he's really been a consensus first overall pick. Do you see him going first overall after his season at Penn State? What makes him a first overall pick?
He's not. He's just 100% not. I think that Ivar Stenberg is a better prospect than him, and I really believe it when I saw him play at the World Junior Hockey Championships back in December. He was a captain for Team Sweden. They won gold over there, picked up 10 points in 7 games. McKenna has been regarded as this highly touted prospect since he was 15, right? And it's a whole lot to do with the Canadian media and the Canadian market especially. They really want to hype up their guys. I think it's a travesty, honestly, because the Canadian media really loves to center down on these white and red players that do not have, and they don't focus on any other countries. Those are the only teams that they look at. Those are the only places that they look at is these teams born in Canada, these players born in Canada. So I think Ivar Stenberg is a lot better than McKenna, and you'll see it when he gets drafted.
Now, I'm totally going to go a little two-faced here. I know that I said there were concerns about McKenna and how he disrupted the team chemistry, but if you watch the tape of McKenna at Penn State, there is no doubt that he is the most talented player in this prospect pool. I mean, he's got that great picture at Beaver Stadium where he scored the goal and he's going like this. I mean, this guy's stick handling, the shooting is great.
Didn't they lose that game?
And they did lose that game, but listen, McKenna played great, and I think that was more Penn State's fault, not McKenna. But, I mean, just look at the tape. Look at the footage. He's a tremendous offensive talent. He's got speed. The wrist shot is powerful. He can snipe it past goalies. And I think that you'll see whenever he gets to the NHL that he is going to be the best player out of this pool.
Yeah, he looks a lot like another Connor Bedard. Is really what he looks like. I mean, they're related. I mean, they're both cousins. So that's my player comparison to Gavin McKenna. I still do think he'll go first overall. But the question now is which team? Right now you look at the bottom 10 teams who have a percent at getting the first overall pick. You got the Vancouver Canucks, Chicago Blackhawks, Calgary Flames, New York Rangers, Seattle Kraken, Toronto Maple Leafs, Florida Panthers, all in that conversation for that first overall pick. Now, the draft lottery's coming in May. The date's still to be determined, but it will be happening in May. And we saw last year they kind of changed it, and they did the live lottery in front of everyone with the ping pong balls. And I think it went really well. What are your thoughts about the draft lottery? Stone, I'll start with you.
I mean, I like the draft lottery. It's one of the more exciting dates of the year. I think unlike the NFL where you can just tank and guarantee yourself that number 1 overall pick, it creates a question as to who the number 1 overall pick is going to go to. I think that it's going to be Vancouver, but do not let Chicago win this draft lottery, because if Chicago wins and you pair Gavin McKenna up with Connor Bedard, that could be a Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, two-headed monster-esque team in the West, and that could be dangerous for years to come.
And that is exactly what the league is going to do, 100%. The reason why they chose Matthew Schaefer to go to the New York Islanders, because remember, the Islanders finished as the 11th worst team to have the odds of the pick, and they slipped all the way down to 1. It was a really, really good story. I think the league kind of has a little bit of ball, and it kind of has like a little bit of a, some sort of influence on this kind of pick and who gets the opportunity to choose a player like McKenna. I think the Hawks get the first pick. They don't have the best odds, but I do not believe Vancouver is going to get first overall.
Oh, you could 100% see that. I mean, they did it with Crosby and Malkin with the Penguins. And Chicago is one of these storied teams. I mean, they had Jonathan Tames and Patrick Kane for the 2010s.
Why not do it over again?
Exactly.
And the fact that they're cousins, I think that that's a really, really good story, a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, so I disagree. I think that the NHL doesn't have much of a hand in it now. Just because it's in front of a public and not behind closed doors. But that'll do it all for our NHL draft segment. Again, it will be at the end of June. Draft lottery will be in the middle of May. Again, dates still be determined on that. But that'll do it all for us. Coming up next, linebackers on the Plead Your Case live draft special.
Welcome back to the NFL portion of our NFL Live Draft Special. Again, Ethan Spazarski hosting you through for the next bit of time while we continue to carry on and look into our NFL draft prospects. As now we go into a depth pool rather than a lot of the other different positions we've covered thus far. Linebacker and edge rusher provides a very bit of interesting prospects. It's hard to nail down just 5. Arvell Reese, notably arguably the best overall prospect the entire draft, included this, along with David Bailey, Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain Jr., a man who made himself well known in the college football playoff, as well as Makeem Messidor as well. So now, gentlemen at the desk, I turn it to you to lead us in the direction. Where do you believe in the linebacker world where there's a lot of success, where there's a very popular guy or maybe someone that sticks out so far?
Well, if we're talking about the coverage linebackers, I think the headliners are obviously Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. We're going to talk about that. Arvell Reese, though, I think he might go to be an edge rusher in the NFL. I think his profile, the way his speed, his strength, the way he played at Ohio State last year in that first half, the second half he kind of fell off a little bit. I think Sonny Styles is honestly the better overall player and linebacker compared to Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese, again, I don't think he's going to be playing too much in coverage. He could be a kind of back-and-forth guy, kind of like Micah Parsons was his rookie year, playing some on the edge and playing some in coverage. But I think those two are the headliners. Will they go in the top 5? I think both go in the top 5.
I think a lot of guys are going to be going here in this linebacker class. I think that this class is going to be the one that we see the most players go out of in the first round tomorrow night. This is going to be one of the most linebacker-heavy drafts that we've seen. But then after day 1, maybe even into day 2 a little bit, it's going to lie off, and then they're going to go to those edge rushers, which we're going to get onto here a little bit earlier. But I think the key aspect for not only one of these players, but a lot of them in general, is that they have been in other positions in their past, like in safety or in corner, and moved over to that edge or linebacker position. So if those guys can do that in college, they could definitely do it into the NFL. And like you mentioned, Luke, it's going to happen for a few of these guys, maybe moving from that linebacker position onto an edge rusher. I think that's going to be the upside for a lot of these guys going into day 1.
Yeah, I think with this linebacker class, we have 5 truly outstanding prospects. Obviously, Reese and Styles coming out of Ohio State. Styles wore the green dot. I was really impressed by how he did.
Very much.
But we got to talk about the back half of those linebackers in that top 5. I love C.J. Allen. He also wore the green dot while he was at Georgia. He's very cerebral. I love how he's a thumper in the middle. He dominates in run defense, and he holds his own in zone coverage. He really does it all when it comes down to being a complete package as a linebacker. And I like the idea that he's a senior leader and that he's coming in with a lot of experience being a leader of a team. I think that makes a big difference when you're in the front 7 and you're the main linebacker of a team.
I mean, a person that sticks out that had national steam where he really wasn't well known was Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. My biggest comp is DeMarvion Overshown. Difference in same in size, but also he can fly around sideline to sideline. They have great coverage linebacker, a ball hawking linebacker. So I mean that's a guy that will go late in the first round or the first 2 picks of the second round.
And as you mentioned, Joe, this is a deep position as well as the edges. Some of the guys we didn't mention, Anthony Hill Jr., who could be slide into that into that first round, also could be a day 2 pick. Some of these guys could also be day 2 picks. Jake Golday, who's a 6'5" linebacker from Cincinnati. Kyle Lewis, who is outstanding, one of the outstanding linebackers at Pitt this year. That Pitt linebacker room, just absolutely amazing. I think Kyle Lewis will be able to get something done in the NFL as well. Josiah Trotter, Missouri, another guy.
Yeah, and we kind of touched on it and kind of wrapping up here in the linebacker portion because, funny enough, 3 of the 5 guys on our top 5 predictions are all edge rushers. And, Luke, you kind of touched on this in the opening question. If you had to pick between Reese and Styles, who would you go, gentlemen? More to rapid-fire question answer.
This is a tough question, and I think it depends on where you see them playing. Like I said, Sonny Styles started at Ohio State as a safety, transitioned into that middle linebacker area, with the green dot on his helmet, calling all the plays. He's going to be the guy that's going to have the green dot on their helmet. I think he's going to go to the Tennessee Titans, honestly, at number 4. I think he's going to go 3 or 4. I'd take him ahead of Arvell Reese just because I think he is more of a solidified – we've seen a guy like him before is what I want to say. Yeah. We've seen guys like Sonny Styles who can produce. Arvell Reese, we don't know if he's going to be a coverage guy or if he's going to be an edge guy. Arvell Reese obviously has the talent and the size and the build to be a top 3 pick like he probably will be. He's probably going to go 2 to the Jets or 3 to the Cardinals. He's going to be a top 5 pick. Both of them are, but I think I would take Sonny Styles. But it really depends on what kind of guy you want.
I'm going with Sonny Styles on this one as well. I think the biggest aspect for him is that he not only can play one position, he can play practically 3 or 4 different ones. And if you're a general manager for your team, you want to know, if I can use him in this position, that's great. but if I get another opportunity to draft the guy that I really wanted, or maybe I see an opportunity where I can draft or trade for a different guy in that, offensive or defensive zone, then I'm going to go with that, and Sonny Styles can go and be flexible wherever.
One more thing before Cade, you go. I wanted to agree with something you said. Sonny Styles is a different position than Arvell Reese. I think Arvell Reese is going to end up being that edge rusher. Sonny Styles is that top coverage linebacker, and after that, the talent is – there's still talent there, but it's not like the Sonny Styles talent. I think there's enough guys that you can draft in this edge class at the top half of the first round that are better than those guys that you'll get if you miss on Sonny Styles.
Yeah, quickly, Sonny Styles, I like his IQ and his coverage. I think he's pretty fantastic in both of those areas. And Reese, I think, is a little bit more of a project player than people are giving him right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go Sonny Styles just because Sonny Styles, the meat of the defense, right in the middle, somebody you can build around, kind of build your defense around. And so, yeah, calling the plays where he's going to be calling the plays day one for whatever team. I really like the Tennessee Titans. That is a great fit, and I think he would be a great player.
All right, someone call ESPN. We'll have to tell them their rankings are just too incorrect. Now we transition over to specific edge rushers. We kind of talked about it. Bailey, Bain Jr., as well as Messidor as well. Those three gentlemen, two of which in Bain and Bailey are projected to go top 10 overall coming up tomorrow in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Is there any misreading here as well? Do you think all three kind of apply the same philosophy in their edge rushing, or is there one that really sticks over the rest?
I think what we talked about, I want to talk about Ruben Bain Jr. I want to talk about the Miami guys because those are the two guys that really were impressive late into this college football playoffs this past season. We talked about it in the last segment, Cade, where we were talking about sometimes you just have to take the guys that produce and are talented and over the guys that Ruben Bain, they're talking about how his arms are too short. He doesn't have long enough arms to play the edge. He might have to transition to interior. Okay, but did you watch him play in the college football playoffs? He dominated every offensive line he went up against, as well as Akeem Messidor. Guys like Akeem Messidor, that's a guy that I don't think you can draft in the top half of the first round. I think he has the talent, but he's 25 years old. He played 4 years at West Virginia and then played this past season at Miami. He's 25 years old. I don't think he is going to be a guy that is going to be taken in the front half of the first round, but I see him going in the back half.
I think the big thing for me is that a lot of these guys are fast. And with edge rushers, they have become one of the more prominent positions within the NFL as of late, thanks to Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, a lot of other guys, Max Crosby, that have come in and made this defensive position a completely new ball game. And for these guys coming in, they've been able to learn and adapt in that situation than what it has become. I think for them, the big thing is speed. And they got it. And especially even though, he might have shorter arms. But if he has shorter arms, he has a lower reach down into the floor of that grass. And then he can maybe get a quicker bit of a push-off and get around in time. You never know what's going to happen. The speed is going to be the name of the game for this one.
Well, if you like physical tools, there's a guy outside of that top three that I think you'll really enjoy. Chedrick Folk is an excellent player out of Auburn. I really like how physical he is. He has led the nation in run stops over the past 3 seasons with 62. He's going to be absolutely imposing on the run. And then if you give him a little bit of time to learn the pass rush, he has the physical tools. He is ready to dominate the league in 2 to 3 years.
I mean, you want to go dominate. Let's talk about David Bailey, a pure game record there. And I think he's really flown kind of under the radar there. Going to be a for sure first rounder, but I mean, just kind of seeing where he fits with other teams. But that's a guy where you kind of got a stockier build, and he's still got the speed to come off the ball. But I mean, David Bailey, that would be, if I was a GM, I would want him and place a safe bet on him to be a fantastic NFL player.
Yeah, if you were going to build an edge rusher in Madden, I think David Bailey is the exact stature you would give the guy. He is an absolute freak of a human being. Think about Myles Garrett. One guy I want to touch on before we head off, Donny Dennis Sutton. He was talked about very heavily in the pre-draft or in all the preseason stuff, all those early mock drafts after last year's draft. I think he was still a pretty talented player. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. He gets his hands up a lot on that defensive line, batting balls down. I think Donny Dennis Sutton is a guy that might fall to late day 2 and will be a very good player in the NFL.
That's a great steal. He's kind of flown underneath the radar. 6'6". I mean, you want to talk about bend, very athletic. And I mean, he was on a bad Penn State team, so he kind of flew underneath the radar. But I mean, that was a guy having a lot of steam last year, where he kind of cooled off this year. Was quiet. in the sense that he really didn't get national spotlight until now, but he'll be a great value pick for a team.
And, well, that is going to conclude it. I thought that was really good. Again, another position that we've seen, there's a lot of depth to it and a lot of talent as well. We kind of, on the defensive side of the ball, have seen that a little bit more than maybe some of the offensive positions as well. But, gentlemen, a really good job of helping encapsulate and really funneling where our vision should be coming up. As we have one more league we got to touch on here before we transition and wrap up our NFL draft special, and it's out on the diamond. A lot of high schoolers are premiered to be some of the top and best picks in this upcoming MLB draft. Is that the case? Should their teams be looking somewhere else? You'll just have to stick around to find out here on the PYC Laugh Draft Special as that continues to roll on.
Oh, I didn't see you there. I'm Mia Hinkins, and welcome to Buell Hall, home of Waynesburg University's Department of Communication. If you visit our campus, you'll have the opportunity to attend some comm classes, enjoy lunch with our students, and watch us in action. We hope to see you here soon at Waynesburg University.
To schedule your personal visit, go to waynesburg.edu/admissions/schedule-visit. Come grow with us at Waynesburg University.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the live draft special of Plead Your Case. Myself, Brady Donovan, is alongside Logan Arblaster and Paul Sembow, and we're going to be talking about a little bit about the MLB draft coming up so far this year. And guys, the first question that I want to immediately get off the table, Rock Chalowski. This guy's an absolute stud out of UCLA. Is he consensus number one? Logan, we'll ask you first.
He 100% is. There's no question about it. He's going to be the first guy off the board in this MLB draft. And the question could be, what is there to like about this guy? But the real question should be, what isn't there to like about him? When you look at a shortstop that's going to be playing in the major leagues, you want to see a guy that fields and throws the ball all in one motion, has great plate instincts. This is a guy that's walked more than he struck out in his college career, and he was the best player in all of college baseball last year, just the sixth non-draft eligible player to win Baseball America's College Baseball Player of the Year. So without a doubt, this guy is the number one pick in the draft. By the way, a three-star high school quarterback as well.
Looking at his resume of all of his awards, he's got to be your consensus number one.
Yeah.
Overall, his scouting grade is 65. That is extremely high. And he's leading the team with home runs, 13 home runs at 352 average in college. But the thing is, the number one pick is the White Sox. I don't think the White Sox would need a shortstop because of Colson Montgomery. Give him some more time to develop. But at the same time, the White Sox are one of these teams in the top five that need a lot. Murakami was a big ad for them, but other than that, they need to keep building. So maybe drafting Chalowski will be another piece of that puzzle so you can get back to that 95-win team.
Yeah, I think that the Chicago White Sox are truly blessed to land in this spot in the MLB draft and get a guy like Rock Chalowski, who is considered to be the best shortstop prospect since Troy Tulowitzki in 2004. And guys, 4 out of the top 5 prospects in this draft are at that shortstop position. Is this draft front loaded, or is there more talent just outside of those top 10? Now, Paul, we'll ask you.
I feel that there is definitely more depth. Like what we're going to talk about probably here in a little bit is Gio Rojas. He's another good pitcher, but it's the top 4 are shortstops, and the teams do need shortstops in this draft, but there's a lot more talent than what is shown here.
Well, I always go to the point of nobody's drafting for a position in Major League Baseball. You're drafting based off the guy's potential to possibly become a great hitter. And that's what you have here at the top of this draft class is a lot of great hitters, and there is a lot of shortstops, but they can be moved wherever they're needed in the lineup just to get their bat in the lineup once they get past AAA. But I would say that Derek Curiel of Louisiana State, LSU. He's an outfielder, and he's a guy that's impressed me a lot of power potential from him. 345 was his average when he was the leadoff hitter just a couple years ago. He did have a little bit of a slump last year. He's looking to get back on track. But this is a guy that's compared to Christian Yelich in his pop in the mid-20s in home run numbers throughout his career at LSU. So I really think that as much as there's a bunch of shortstops to pull from in this draft, he's also a great addition to the top of that draft class in the outfield.
Yeah, an interesting thing to note, at least in the top 50 prospects of this draft, 16 out of the 50 are pitchers, 11 out of the 50 are shortstops, and 14 out of the top 50 are outfielders. So 41 out of the top 50 prospects in this draft just come from 3 total positions. So guys, the top 5 picks coming into this draft, we hinted a little bit at the Chicago White Sox, but the the Tampa Bay Rays, Minnesota Twins, San Francisco Giants, and then the Pittsburgh Pirates. What do you guys think? Who do you think lands at those teams? We'll go to you, Logan.
Well, when I hear the Pirates, I think about what their strategy has been in recent drafts, and that's to compile as much pitching as possible as they can get into their system. They've done that with Paul Skeens. Seth Hernandez is one of the more recent names. But another guy to look at here is Gio Rojas. That's a guy who's 18 years old. You see a lot of people sometimes trying to reach for a high schooler, and there's some uncertainty that is surrounded by that. But this guy out of Stoneman Douglas, Florida, out of Stoneman Douglas High School, there's been a bunch of Major League Baseball players that come out of there, including Roman Anthony, who just signed a massive Major League contract with the Washington Nationals, Anthony Rizzo, and Jesus Luzardo. So they're just a complete circus of Major League Baseball talent over there, and I think this is going to be another guy. He's throwing 98 miles per hour at the age of 18 years old.
That gives him a lot of time to develop. If he chooses to go the college route, Pittsburgh would lose him from this draft. He would have to get redrafted, but it gives him time to develop in their farm system. That's what the Pirates need, is to keep developing. Right now, Jacob Lombard is expected to be drafted by the Pirates based off the order, but we don't need another shortstop. We need more pitching to say, because right now the bullpen is good, but we can make it even better with pieces like Gio Rojas. For example, Connor Griffin just signed this huge deal for Pittsburgh. The last thing we need is another position player in the infield. So I'd say Gio Rojas would definitely be a good pickup for the Pirates. Like you said, he's thrown 98 in high school. You don't see that nowadays. That is a great attribute to have as a player, and I'd like to see where he goes in his MLB career. Hopefully the Pirates.
You don't want to hit too hard here on the Pittsburgh Pirates, but they definitely need at least some pitching. But I would like to see them draft a corner infielder. They desperately need a third baseman. Jared Triolo cannot hit a baseball with a tennis racket. I mean, this guy is terrible. He's a Gold Glove winner, but not as a third baseman. So he needs to kind of shift around. He can't just be stuck in one position. And one guy that I kind of want to hint at is Ace Reese out of Mississippi State. He is listed as a third baseman on the draft board. So it'd be interesting to see whether they go with that position and just take the all-out third baseman, or if they're stuck at that 5th overall pick and one of those shortstops in the top 4 land to them.
Like I said, these guys have time to develop, so you can move them around. You can make them into kind of your perfect player, if you put it in that sense. But you can put them from position to position, except if you're going from catcher to an outfielder. But you can move these infielders around from first base to third base, etc.
Well, here's the thing. Let me be the voice of reason here, guys. I want to make sure that we make this clear. There isn't going to be a lot of people that are like Connor Griffin that are coming up and making their debut at the age of 19. So I'm with you that the Pirates or other teams might be looking for certain positions because they might be lacking in a certain area. But by the time that somebody like Reed comes up and plays, on average it takes players about 4 or 5 years to get through the minor leagues. So at that rate, Jared Triolo might be out of baseball altogether. So I would just say that with all these teams, they're really looking at the shortstops in this class. One of the names we didn't mention was Justin LeBron. You got to love the name of LeBron in any sense of the sports world, and he's overshadowed by a number of guys. He was actually in line over Rock Chalowski to be the best player in baseball last year, so I want to make sure that we are mentioning him too.
Yeah, he's absolutely a name that needs to be mentioned. Looking to be at the Alabama Crimson Tide's highest overall pick in the MLB draft. And that will do it for the MLB draft section on the live draft special of Plead Your Case. We will now send it to the cornerbacks.
Welcome back in here to Buell Hall as we're carrying on our NFL Live Draft Special, an event that takes place in less than 24 hours. And as we roll into our final position group of the evening, it's one that carries on a defensive loading class that looks really promising and good. And these defensive backs just look as good as anything else in the draft. Caleb Downs, Mansour Delane, Dylan Thieneman, Emmanuel McNeil Warren on top of Jermon McCoy. There's also a bunch of names that didn't make the top 5 that I know a lot of us were talking about earlier on in the draft. But I'm going to turn it over to our resident expert, Mr. Gambita Island, a gentleman who is all too familiar on the defensive back side. For you, Brett, who sticks out to you the most here that has the ability to be shut down no matter where he is on the field, corner or safety?
Well, I think the lowest hanging fruit is Mansour Delane. He's a true lockdown defender. He hasn't seen that many targets in his career, and that just speaks levels to the ability he's able to shut down these receivers at. And it's kind of like Quinyon Mitchell a couple years ago. He wasn't seeing too many targets at Toledo, and actually, funny enough, he has another Toledo friend that's in this draft in Emmanuel McNeil Warren. But Mansour Delane is a lockdown corner, and I think that's going to get him picked pretty high.
I'm going to go with Avion Terrell out of Clemson. He's a quick twitch athlete. He notices his coverages well. He's very good in man-to-man. He's a great tackler for starters. 5 forced fumbles last season at his cornerback position. That's stuff that you see from your middle linebackers. He did that at the outside cornerback position. The brother of A.J. Terrell. The bloodline runs hot in this family. He's got defensive back in his blood. The only thing that he struggles at is press coverage. Sometimes he's not as good in that physical department despite being a great tackler.
You know, Benny, I'm right there with you for Avion Terrell. I see a little bit of Devin Witherspoon in him because he's not afraid to step up and make a tackle. But if we're looking at some other coverage, a guy I'm looking at is Colton Hood out of Tennessee. He's a little bit further down the board, going to be more of a late first, early second type of cornerback, and that's just because he only had one starting year at Tennessee. But in that starting year, he showed up well. He tested well in the combine. He shows all the big corner traits. He's 6 feet and 190 pounds, so he can play big with the taller wide receivers of the NFL. So Colton Hood, I think, is a great guy to look forward to for his coverage.
Yeah, give me the best guy on the board here overall. Caleb Downs, safety out of Ohio State. He's been easily past 3 years, he's been easily the best guy out there for football. 1 year at Alabama, then 2 years at Ohio State, won national championship, didn't get there last year, but he's been a leader on that Ohio State defense, and on the field, off the field, leader overall. And he shows that throughout his talent thing. If you're taking Caleb Downs, you're not only getting one of the best safeties in the draft, you're also getting the best leader in the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here, and unlike a lot of the other different maybe positions we've seen, all 5 of these gentlemen are projected first-round picks as well. Is there anyone you see maybe who could slip down of these 5 gentlemen? I know they've all received a lot of praise. You guys have your eyes on a certain maybe someone. Is there anyone here that could fall out of the first round?
I'm going to go with D'Angelo Pons out of Indiana, and the only reason that he's not going to be one of the top cornerbacks selected is because he's extremely undersized. He only stands at 5'8". He had no reps at the slot cornerback position in his college career, so he's going to have to transition to playing slot in the NFL. Despite being undersized, he's extremely physical. He's very good in the press. He was a big part in Indiana's national championship run. very, very much so the focal point on the defensive side of things. So I think he can be the biggest sleeper in this year's draft.
A lot of people forget, too, he followed Sig from JMU to Indiana to be a part of that team. I'm going with Malik Muhammad from Texas. I think he's a round 3, round 4 guy. He's good in zone. He kind of just needs to improve that tackling. And I think even in the NFL, he has some special teams appeal as well. So I'm going Malik Muhammad.
I think when you look at Avion Terrell, my apologies, we mentioned how he's going to be one of the top corners in this draft, but with him being just 5'11", you mentioned, Benny, some of the issues in his press coverage. I think he could be a guy who slips into that second round. I also talked about Colton Hood. These guys are both fringe first round, early second type of defensive backs. So if teams are scared away by the size of Terrell or the lack of big-time experience for Hood, you could see them fall to the second round.
I think Emmanuel McNeil-Warren will fall in the first round because of the fact that when you look at it, yes, he played in the MAC in Toledo, and that is a big factor behind it because the competition isn't as strong as, so to say, playing in the Big Ten or SEC, and that can tend to scare teams away very easily and move players out. We saw that last year with Harold Fannin Jr. Well, I don't think it should scare the teams. I think it will end up doing that and maybe pushing them to the early second round.
Now, we've talked a lot about the talent that these guys bring into the draft, but the question now becomes, do the teams necessarily in the order of which they are right now in the first round fall into that talent? I know we talked a lot with a couple other positions about, this talent kind of fits here and vice versa. Is there a lot of teams right now in the first round that need to attack a secondary where all 5 guys could go or even more? Or do you think it's going to be something where teams might have to make moves or people will settle down or even people are just not going to have to go as all because their overall grades don't really match up with where other teams' needs are here in the draft order?
Well, let's face the facts. Every team in the National Football League can use a lockdown corner. Now, if I'm one of the teams in the first round and I need a true cornerback one, I'm addressing that in the first round. I will say I was big on Pawns just a few minutes ago, but outside of the first round talent, there is a drop off. At least I see it that way. You want to go after the top 3 guys if you need a true cornerback one in this year's draft class. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to address it in the first round. If not, you're going to be taking a chance on some guys. I don't know if you're going to be willing to do that in this year's draft.
Well, look at what the Rams did. McDuffie and Watson, both from the Chiefs. We know they're not going corner. Who is, though? Maybe the Chiefs. Now that they lost those 2 corners to the Rams, they could go Monster to Lane at 9, I think. And then another team I wanted to bring up, the New York Football Giants, now that they have 2 picks inside the top 10. I think one of these picks, they're going someone in the secondary. It could be Downs.
I think when you're looking at some other positions like safety and Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, he's a guy who really has to fit to a certain scheme. He's kind of like Nick Emanwari was last year, where he's this big athletic freak, but if you put him in the wrong situation, then he's really going to struggle. So teams like Baltimore, bringing in head coach Jesse Minter, is a team that could definitely use him to bolster up that defense. Seattle's lost multiple defensive backs, be it Reek Wool and Kobe Bryant. I don't think they'll look at McNeil-Warren to bring him in because they have Nick Emanwari. But he's a guy where you can plug him in. He can play nickel, he can play outside linebacker, and he can play safety at a high level. So he may not go at the top of the first round, but there will be a team that finds a way to make him work in the National Football League.
Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon, he's a guy that if you are looking for a team that teams drafting early, I think all 3 of the safeties that we've mentioned here today, after that, the drop-off is incredible. I don't think there's a maybe late second round, early third round guy that we see here. And there's a lot of teams in the league that need safeties. Giants are one of them in secondary overall. Chiefs were just mentioned. And when you look at that, I think you could see these guys going a little bit earlier than what their rank is just because of the fact that there are a little bit more heavy needed teams overall. Miami's another one where they just need anything and everything.
All righty, gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate the insight, and that is going to conclude all of our position group focus here on the live draft special. We're now going to turn it over to Logan Arblaster, who got to do something awesome in a sit-down interview with Waynesburg University's very own Donny Chedrick, who's a part of 93.7 The Fan, a radio station in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to kind of talk and debrief over the Pittsburgh Steelers-specific offseason and where they are heading into the draft here on the PYC Live Draft Special.
working here. My bad.
Let's keep it moving right along here on the Plead Your Case live draft special. I'm Logan Arblaster, and joining us now on the show, one of the best in the business, one of my co-workers, Donny Football from Pittsburgh Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan. Also a panelist on The Final Word, so quite the TV personality too. And around here, some know him as Donny Chedrick, but today, Donny, I'm going to need you to put on your Donny Football thinking cap because we were breaking down the Steelers offseason thus far in previewing the Steelers draft possibilities. But before we get into that, though, seriously appreciate you taking the time. It's great to have you on.
Absolutely, guys. Happy to help. I can remember back in 2016, I took part in my first Plead Your Case draft special. I was talking about guys like Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Ezekiel Elliott. Like, some of these guys aren't even in the league anymore. So pretty cool that about a decade later I can help you guys do the same thing.
But let's rewind for a second. Let's take a step back, Donny. Steelers season ends, wild card loss, 30-6 to Houston. Immediately, questions start pouring in. I mean, is Mike Tomlin done? Was Aaron Rodgers playing his last game in the NFL? What happens to the staff, the roster? And then less than 24 hours later, boom, Mike Tomlin steps down after nearly 2 decades. I mean, that sent shockwaves for the entire league. Art Rooney II saying he would have brought Tomlin back, says guys like Tomlin don't grow on trees, but instead they pivot, bring in Pittsburgh's own Mike McCarthy. You see that emotion in the opening press conference. You hear him talking about identity, culture, kind of redefining what Steelers football is supposed to look like again, especially coming from an offensive-minded guy. So let me start here. What have been your biggest takeaways from the Steelers offseason so far, and specifically, what stands out to you about Mike McCarthy and what he brings to the table?
So when the Mike McCarthy hire happened, I was underwhelmed. Not so much because of the guy himself. I think he's actually a pretty good coach. In fact, and you've heard this before. So many people have said this. He's kind of just the offensive-minded version of Mike Tomlin. And you can put their resumes right next to each other, and it would be hard for people, if you didn't have their names on top of them, to tell the difference because their resumes are that similar. Plus, McCarthy with Rodgers has that win over Tomlin in the Super Bowl back in Super Bowl 45. But I was underwhelmed by their search. I was underwhelmed by the lack of a wide net that was cast when Mike Tomlin steps down after nearly 2 decades. I think we were all programmed to think it would be the same sort of search. Hey, younger guy, hasn't been a head coach before, fresh ideas, fresh mind, and we all got kind of enamored by the 2 big coordinators and coaches with the LA Rams. You had Shieldhouse, you had Shula, neither one of which got a head coaching job, by the way. One of them got promoted. But I think a lot of people felt underwhelmed by the search itself, where that's what upset me. I wasn't upset, and I'm not upset with Mike McCarthy, the guy. Dude loves Pittsburgh, clearly. He loves Steelers football, clearly. And I think he's a pretty good coach. I just don't know if it's one that takes you that far into the future.
And you look at some of the names that he's brought in on his staff so far, and it seems like they're all also Pitt guys, Pittsburgh related. They have some type of connection to that tree. So, I mean, this is a team that's been stuck in that same zone for years now. 9-8, 10-7, over and over again, this perpetual black hole. 7 of the 8 last seasons right in that range of 9-8 or 10-7. That's good, but that's not anywhere near good enough. No playoff wins in nearly a decade. But then this offseason, they go totally aggressive. Big names in free agency. Some people are even saying they had the best free agency class in the entire league. So what jumps out to you there? Have they actually done enough to break out of that middle-of-the-pack cycle?
Like they're still right about there, right in that same range, 9 or 10 wins. We still have the question mark at quarterback. They did hire in Mike McCarthy. The only other guy that could have attracted Aaron Rodgers back to this whole thing, and I'm just assuming he's going to come back. But quarterback is still going to be a question mark, and they'll still be relatively mediocre at that position if they go with a guy that's in his early 40s. We saw how last year went. But otherwise, I do like their offseason. You make the trade for Michael Pittman Jr., you sign him to a contract that really isn't that bad for the team. I know people today, they tend to see financial figures when dudes get signed, and they still think it's like the 1980s or 1990s, and they're blown away by a dude getting nearly $20 million. That's a really middle of the road player. And I think Pittman's actually better than that. I mean, that is wide receiver 2 money at this point, and that's what he's going to be. I liked the Rico Dowdle signing a lot. He is somebody that took big-time advantage of his opportunities, both in his final year in Dallas with Mike McCarthy and then his only season in Carolina, where he went into the year not as the number 1 running back, took over that job, had 1,000-yard seasons back-to-back for 2 different teams, and he's had some huge contributions. Some games were massive. Some games were a little bit light in terms of the yardage and touches, but I think he's a pretty good player. An underrated one that I think they've made, and a few people in the Pittsburgh media brought this up, Sebastian Joseph Day along that defensive line is a sneaky move that they made that I'm a fan
Steering
of.
the ship. So how do you think that the draft philosophy is going to evolve this year?
So I think we've started to see, even in the first couple of years with Omar Khan and Andy Weidel, with Mike Tomlin in the fold, that those guys did have a fair share of input. But it felt like that was the case with some of their picks maybe later on in the draft, the middle rounds of the draft, which will be very important considering the Steelers, like you said, Logan, have a dozen picks, in this weekend's draft. That being said, it doesn't seem like Mike McCarthy is quite as entrenched in the entire process as Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin used to go to the Senior Bowl every year. He would be very active there, very active at the Combine, active at so many pro days, getting to know these guys. And Mike McCarthy likes to take a step back. So I think even the early picks, the first rounder at 21 overall, I think we could see more of an Omar Khan, Andy Weidel influence than we have in their first few selection processes.
It's got to the point where it seemed like Mike Tomlin was actually the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Art Rooney II wasn't. And I understand the whole process of building from the trenches, but when you look at the elite teams in this league right now, you kind of have to step away from what Mike Tomlin's philosophy was. Buffalo, Kansas City, those teams can score. Explosive offenses win, okay? And yeah, Pittman helps, but is that enough? I don't know that it is, and that's why I keep looking at this wide receiver class. I don't know about you, Donnie. Guys like Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, high upside players, but maybe not the slam dunk wide receiver ones just yet. So where do you stand on that? Do you think the Steelers should consider going receiver in round 1? What are you looking at in round 1?
Not only do I think they should consider it, I think they should do it. I've been on the wide receiver train since the season ended, even before they made the trade for Michael Pittman, which, yeah, that was a great addition, or at least I hope it's a great addition. But they still need to get the job done there because you have DK Metcalf, you have Michael Pittman Jr., and then after that you have Roman Wilson, who has barely seen the field in 2 seasons. You have who else? Ben Skoranek, who we know is a special teams ace more than anything. I think you finish the job at wide receiver, and we have seen a shift over the last decade where teams found receivers, and the Steelers were great at this. We all know their history. Teams were able to find top-of-the-line wide receivers in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round of the NFL draft. Not that you still can't every now and then, but now we see a lot of wide receiver talent going on that first night, and it seems like the philosophy around that has changed greatly, and I think that's where Omar Khan will be able to really take what's still there, because I think a handful of those guys could be gone, so they do have to hope that things break their way. But you went through some of those names, Logan. There was a lot of wide receiver talent in this draft, and with the amount of picks they have, I still think they should double up. I think they should come away from this weekend with 2 wide receivers, and hopefully one of them is at 21.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. I mean, if you're going to roll with Roman Wilson as your 3 right now, which I do to some extent still have hope for him, you have to go out there and you have to look to add. And speaking of the key trends that are kind of fluctuating in the NFL, swinging back towards offensive-minded schemes, you have to add as much playmaking as you can. So a guy like Mekhi Lemon, the USC wideout, already visiting the facility actually for the Steelers, he had over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, wins the nation's best receiver in college football last year. If he's there at 21 and the Steelers are on the clock, to me it's a no-brainer pick. Do you look elsewhere? I mean, is that really even a question? I guess you already kind of answered it. But
when it comes to other positions, you mean, or other guys?
If Mekhi Lemon's there at 21, I mean, he's the best receiver in the league. I didn't think that they would want to go any other way.
The only other directions that I would be happy with them going are, I guess it's really just one other direction I would be happy with them going, and that's, let's just play the game of Carnell Tate being off the board, Mekhi Lemon being off the board. I think both of those guys absolutely will be. And Jordan Tyson is the wild card in this. I like this dude a lot. I know he has a little bit of an injury history and there's some concern there. And that's really the only thing that could allow him to fall to them at 21. Let's just say those top 3 wide receivers are off the board. Then there's a little bit of a gap. If Vega Ioane from Penn State, the left guard, is there, I would be cool with them going to the podium and saying his name, because then your offensive line is solidified. There's still a little question at left tackle. One more year of Jones and Cook and seeing how that works out there. But you would have 4 of the 5 positions solidified on your offensive line that could carry you through the next half decade or full decade. That would be the only other name that I'm super excited about if it happens that those top 3 receivers are gone.
And with Isaac Seumalo losing him, they definitely could be looking to add at a guard position. Let's flip it to the defensive side now. We spent a lot of time on the offense. Despite all the money invested, being the highest paid defense, the Steelers were, they still were the 26th pass defense last year, middle of the pack against the run. But we also saw some historical rushing performances against them again. So who are some of the defensive prospects that we should keep an eye on? Guys that could come in, kind of immediately fix some of those issues.
So there has been some chatter, I guess you could say, that they may consider going safety. McNeil Warren, who's the big guy from Toledo, a massive safety who I don't think will get out of the first round. So if they're going to draft that dude, it's either pick him at 21 or try to swoop back in there and get him late. He's 6'3", 205 pounds, can do a little bit of everything. Not really a ball hawk type. I think he only had 2 or 3 picks last season, but he can come down and be a thumper in the run game. And when I see him, I think of just your big safeties that have been in the NFL over the last decade or so. I mean, Seattle's had 2 of them, Cam Chancellor and then Nick Eamon-Worry, who was on their Super Bowl team and a great player for them immediately. Somebody like that you could maybe have your eyes on. I also don't think if they do that in the first round that they will – I don't know if they're going to address defense until like the middle of that second day. Because I do think that the offense has things more pressing. We've gone over receiver, we've gone over guard, but there are some, defensive tackles who could slip down. Caleb Banks from Florida, Caden McDonald from Ohio State. Maybe if those guys fall and they're still just chilling there at 53 or 52 or 53, whatever their pick is there in the second round, then you jump on one of those guys.
Something that's kind of maybe going under the radar, too, is Deshaun Elliott's coming back. So I think that'll be a big help for the Steelers secondary, getting him back, because he's a guy that had the least amount of missed tackles in the open field whenever he was healthy over the last couple of seasons. But just a couple more questions for you here, Donny, and I want to throw some rapid-fire ones at you before you go. Do the Steelers find their quarterback of the future in this draft in Pittsburgh? Yes or no?
No, they do not.
Is Aaron Rodgers back next season? Yes or no?
Yes.
Donny, that's all we have for you today, man. We always appreciate the time. You've been a great help to us, not just once, but a couple of times this year. You really set the standard for us here at Waynesburg in the Waynesburg University comm department. So we really value it. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it a ton. And for those of you seniors, good luck graduating in a few weeks.
Thanks, Donny. We appreciate it.
All right.
Don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back.
You're watching the 2026
Plead Your Case Live Draft
Special.
Special. We have the last segment for you on the other side of the break right here on WCTV.
Welcome in now to the senior farewell panels. Traditionally, now a tradition made after the last couple of years here in the live draft special, as myself, Ben Heaps, Logan Arblaster, and Benicio DeFalco have come up to kind of give our final thoughts regarding what's coming up. So, gentlemen, first I ask you, involving the draft special, maybe what's been one of your favorite memories thus far with the live draft special over the years that you have been able to be here? And Logan, I know for you it's more funny because you were able to run one just a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to start with this one, I'd say that off the top, because I produced it, it was a really fun show that we did last year. I'll always remember that, and it was just kind of about the collective buy-in and the rally of the group. That's what's so great about this show is it's kind of like at the end of each year, this is the cherry on top of everything we get to do show-wise with WCTV. Everybody's always excited for it. We take a picture at the end. So, took a lot of pride in that personally, but also just the memories we make when we're here. I remember my freshman year, we took a picture outside, all of us did, afterwards, and that was my phone lock screen for like 3 months. So this stuff means a lot well past just us putting on shows or getting, and it's all about getting better. We're trying to learn, and as students here, it's a great opportunity, especially a live show. You don't get any reruns. You don't get to say anything differently. So I enjoyed producing it. I enjoyed doing that show specifically. I'll let everybody else talk because I have a lot more. But
so for the live draft special, I think my favorite memory has to be just everyone coming together. You mentioned taking pictures afterwards. It's just a core memory here at Waynesburg. But I think I can't really put or focal on just a certain memory. But I think my favorite times here is year in and year out, the bad takes that are just spewed on the draft special, myself included. I bought all the way in to Shedeur Sanders last season thinking that the Steelers were going to draft him. They didn't draft him. The Cleveland Browns drafted him. So I'm talking this guy up, and he didn't even go in the first 3 rounds. So I said he was the can't-miss prospect in last year's draft, and he was a 5th-round pick. So I don't think, we all fall for it. There's always the homer picks, but that's why you got to love it.
Yeah, so this is actually the first time I'm actually on a live show. I'm more behind the scenes, unlike the rest of these guys. So
you did a great job tonight directing it.
Thank you. This is actually a little different for me, different point of view. But, I mean, I'd say my favorite, moment was actually last year with you. We had a little bit of an incident, but we got through it.
Hey, it's all water under the bridge.
Yeah, that is true.
I'm glad we got that figured out.
So am I. But it's like all of us coming together, to make this show what it is, and working with you 3 for 4 years. I don't think I don't think I'll ever make friends like you guys again. So it's an honor to be up here with you guys. So
no, seriously, Ben Heaps directing tonight. I think that deserves an absolute great amount of credit. There's a lot that goes into it, especially with the live show and the anticipation. So you executed beautifully. I was very proud. I was very pleased, and I really appreciate it as well. And kind of tying it to my favorite memory, Benny, you hit the nail on the head. My take, I said Zach Charbonnet was going to be more of an impact running back than Jahmyr Gibbs. I said it. I wholeheartedly believed it, and I was completely missing a whiff. That was terribly incorrect. Now, Zach Charbonnet had a really good year last year.
Yeah, good career.
Compared to where Gibbs was last year. However, in rookie year standards, Jahmyr Gibbs ran away with it, pun intended. So now I kind of turn to you guys in asking, maybe draft-wise, there's been a lot of draft memories we've been a part of. What is a favorite draft memory for you not maybe watching, maybe being, maybe a player getting drafted? What was the moment that stuck out to you there?
So I attended the draft in Cleveland, and I went for round 2. I just went for that day, so I wasn't there the first round or 3 through 6. So all I had was the second round, and I didn't watch much of the draft. I was more doing the extracurriculars. I ran the 40-yard dash. That was a fun time.
What was your time?
But don't worry about it. It was in the 4s. Let's just say it was sub 5. We're still in the 4s. Still draft eligible.
Right, don't worry about it. All right.
But like
Still
I
draft
said,
eligible.
I was doing all the extracurriculars. The one time that I happened to glimpse on the stage in the draft, guess who's walking on stage? Not Roger Goodell. Franco Harris is doing the Steelers draft pick. Who'd they pick? Pat Freiermuth. So, I mean,
that's a big deal.
It was a big deal. Pat Freiermuth, the Muth, before I knew, he got drafted. Franco Harris, also a legend. It was a great time in Cleveland. I hope Pittsburgh can do the same thing tomorrow.
Yeah, I want to backtrack real quick because I don't think I made it a big enough, or I didn't put enough emphasis on your original point to the first question that there are so many bad takes when it comes to this thing. I didn't think it could get worse than Shedeur Sanders, to be honest with you. But I've had my fair share too. But he ended up being a Pro Bowler this year, so maybe it wasn't the worst. I don't know how that happened.
Pro Bowler. So.
I remember specifically Meg Berry told me that Jack Caglione, at the time, because we were in the MLB draft segment, she said that Jack Caglione was going to be the next Shohei Ohtani and make the same amount of money as him, and I was real quick to correct her on that. And I just remember that as one of my memories. But then also, just in general, I would say I watched the draft every single year with my dad, and one that comes to mind is when Kenny Pickett got drafted. And it wasn't something that was going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's like, we know he's solidified the savior of the franchise. But just kind of the reaction to what could have been with Kenny Pickett, I remember us jumping up and down and giving each other a fist bump. So that, for me, I'd say that Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, maybe a lot of people don't know about me is I'm from Maryland, but I am actually a Steelers fan. You know, half of my family grew up here. My mom's side, my grandparents are actually huge Steelers fans. They love Pat Freiermuth. I don't really watch the draft that often, but I do remember the one year I was watching with my grandparents, and Ben Roethlisberger did get drafted, so that would probably have to be.
You remember Big Ben getting drafted?
Maybe,
you have a great memory.
What year was
that? A few months old.
Well,
yeah,
you know, they have pictures
of
me in that book. They were
year.
watching the draft, so I mean, from a memory standpoint, maybe I don't remember it, but
maybe
from that book, I do.
From the book, both Bens came in to the Steelers world.
Same, yeah.
I think for myself, I think my favorite part of the draft is the annual excitement I get from whenever the Steelers draft a running back, because I believe that there's a real chance that we finally found our next franchise running back. That's not a position a lot of people worry about or focus on, but for me with the Steelers, I know it's like I always get excited. So whenever James Conner came up, he got drafted to Pittsburgh. It was one of my favorite moments.
Oh, yeah.
I really wanted that. I remember I was actually in the waiting room to get my hair cut when he got drafted to the Steelers. Now he's over with the Cardinals. I remember Najee Harris sitting at home in my living room. I was excited. And then last year, same with Caleb Johnson. So this year, just sitting there anticipating every pick for the Steelers is always just something to me where I think, ooh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? But I think overall, I think my favorite memory is going to be this year watching the draft, just with the proper send-off with the proper guys, enjoying it and sitting on my couch, not worrying about anything else with kind of where the draft is. I know it's in Pittsburgh, but for me, just kind of anticipating enjoying this last week of school. So I'm going to anticipate it's going to be my favorite memory there. But now we turn it over for our final question. Just overall of Plead Your Case, what have you been able to take away, and what's been your favorite part of Plead Your Case in our 4 years of being on the TV show?
I'd say my favorite time and something that is going to stick with me forever was how much I've been challenged on this show. My very first episode, I was on with Caleb Yager and Austin Bechtold, who are both doing phenomenal in the field. But I was coming to this university not knowing much about the broadcast industry or even being on TV. I mean, you can look back. I wasn't even looking at the camera. So that was a big it just widened my eyes so much coming on and knowing how much work I had to do and just the challenges that came along the way. And it's been every much worth it because I feel like just getting on these shows and all the shows in general, I've built up so much experience, and I think that's going to translate, hopefully.
Oh, 100%, Ben. I can reiterate that, too. I remember my first show, I was up here, I think it was Caleb Yager and Seth Adams. Caleb Yager, obviously, just on to doing amazing things. And just building the confidence in yourself to become a better talent on the panel from a broadcasting perspective, I think would be number one for me. Overall, like I kind of said at the beginning, none of this would mean anything. This in Waynesburg, it's a pretty cool place. It's a pretty cool university, but the place doesn't mean anything without the people is what I'm trying to say. And at the end of the day, I'll just remember the days coming up here. Maybe I'm not having the best day. Maybe I'm not looking forward to talking about basketball when that's not my strength or strong suit. But I come up here and I see your guys' faces. I see everybody else, and it kind of lifts you up a little bit. And that's something I will definitely miss whenever I'm not here anymore.
Yeah, I remember the first one I did, like I said, behind the scenes more instead of you guys who are actually up here. But I remember working that camera that actually Luke Andrusik is on right now. This is like one of the coolest things ever, getting to use that thing. And,
100%.
It gained a lot of experience from it, whether, directing tonight. It's the first time I've directed like a live show, and that was awesome. And it's experience, and it's just memories that I'll never forget, especially, again, with you guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think the people make everything, and being with you guys, growing with you guys, like growing together, really good job, and I've really appreciated. I've appreciated, especially this year, the effort everyone's given for me. I know I've really looked forward to having that memory with you guys and carrying through just a progression of doing the audition together with Logan Episcopo at the time. Then we transitioned in with Flip, and then Logan running the show and working together and growing together. And then this year as well, kind of the capstone, the final mark, if you will, to where we are. So I've just loved to see the growth. Like you said, it's so much fun to have the people here, and that makes everything. That really makes the entire show. It's the people, the content we create, not always the athletes, not always the storylines, but what we're able to do with it. I'm incredibly grateful for this year for you guys. I appreciate the help.
Same to you.
I've absolutely been. It's not been easy. I don't make it always easy, and I know all of us have done that, but again, for my part, thank you very much. For
I also just 100%. Thank you, man. And I just wanted to add in too. Like I feel like every single year, just knowing this show so well that like you try to set the standard each year. You try to raise the bar from what it was the year before, and what you did this year visually with the show and the graphics you implemented. It kept it entertaining to watch the whole time. And I think we're moving further and closer to what we want it to be each year. And last thing being, it's us four up here, but there's also some guys that are seniors that aren't up here. Mike McKenzie, Flip, they graduated. They had their farewell tour, I think, at the end of last year. But just the guys that aren't up here on the panel, Seth Adams, I'm trying to remember. Dean Shazer. Oh, my gosh. That's getting clipped later because I didn't say him right off the bat. But just a special group of guys, and I'm thankful to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, well, we're thankful for all of you for tuning in with us. We appreciate the time and the effort you have put in for the last almost 2 hours, and we thank you. And we now move on to the next year with the calling and continue to climb up the hill. There is still one more PYC episode coming up next week before we round out the year, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But for our fantastic crew, for Ben Heaps, our director, for our fantastic everyone who's rotated through talent, time in, time out, for helping me, the producer and host for today, Ethan Spazarski, I say so long, friends, farewell, and we will see you guys next week for the last episode of the year here on Plead Your Case.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.